Sarge, really, I really want to welcome you to Prime Time with Sean Mooney, and we would be remiss, folks, if I didn't let you know that we recorded this on 9/11. And, of course, 17 years ago today, we had the worst terrorist attack ever on U.S. soil. And I know that this is a special day to you, Sarge, because you really absolutely, and this is, this isn't a gimmick or a work. I mean, you are an absolute patriot. And I know when this anniversary comes around, it does affect you very much because you've been involved in the military and have also done so much with veterans and also helping people really feel patriotic when you're around.
Yes, I was at a memorial today, earlier this morning, and I just got back from another visit and to a school, and we talked about it, and some of them weren't born, and most of them weren't born then, and to hear more of a on type of speech about it, it got their attention, and they were well prepared. A lot of them drew pictures, and one little boy said, Sergeant Slaughter, the towers had looked like the number 11, and I thought about it for a second. I said, you're right. It did have a number 11, and here it is, September 11th, and it just shows you that they what the young minds think about, and it just kind of floored me, kind of stunned me, and made me kind of back up a little bit. But he wasn't meaning it in any derogatory way or bad way. He just looked at it as it was the number 11.
Yeah, and so many thoughts today that people are having, and you look back then, and it was a horrific day, and people are still paying the price. We have more and more victims of what happened that day. I think they're saying there's over 2,000 more victims who have died since that day from all of the carcinogens and things that happened to their bodies after being around that site. But I also remember, Sarge, when we came out of that, how this country came together. You saw American flags everywhere, and as I said, it was a horrific event, but it also really reminded people what this country stood for, and we really did see people celebrating this country for a long while there, and it's distressing to see at this point that there are some people out there that aren't as proud of this American flag that I know you and I are these days.
Yes. Well, we put the United back in United when that happened, and it didn't matter what race you were, what color you were, man, woman, child. We all stuck together just like a military would, and dug the foxhole, and whoever was in there with you, we fought to make sure that everything would be okay, and we had our leaders and the first watch people and the people that went in there first, and there's so many people that haven't been found yet. Just their their bones and things like that are all they're trying to find out who's who just by doing DNA testing on just crushed pieces of bones, and it's still a sad day. Even though it's 17 years ago, there's people out there that still want to know. I'm sure they know by now that their loved ones that were in those towers, they're gone, but they still would like to have the comfort of knowing that their bodies were found.
Yeah, and there's still a large percentage of people who have not been identified since that day. And Sarge, I'm sure you will agree with me when I say that on this day our thoughts and prayers are with so many of these people that were affected, not only losing family members and friends and so many others, and how it has impacted their lives 17 years later. To this day, that memory is still as fresh as ever to millions of Americans here.
Yeah, the one thing we get lost into a lot of times is that it wasn't just the towers that got hit. You know, we had the crash and of the planes and all the people that lost their lives because of the terrorist attack, and just it's one of those things that gets more emphasis because New York City and thank God, I don't know where you were. I was in San Antonio, Texas. We were doing our Raw and SmackDown shows, and I got a call from my daughter about 0900, and she said, "Dad, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And she said, "Haven't you had the TV on, or do you know what's happening?" And I'll never forget that day. And I drove to Houston, Texas, and I stopped at a fast food restaurant, and it was just eerie. You know, there wasn't anybody around, and I was traveling on the highway pretty much by myself, and everybody was kind of in shock and wondering, is this real or what's going on? And I'm sure a lot of your listeners can remember exactly where they were when that happened. A lot like the space shuttle when it blew up, and it just, it's part of our heritage, our USA. We always pull together, and we keep on pulling together. Sometimes we get pulled in different directions, but we're still Americans, and as I said, we put United back in United that day.
Yeah, and since you mentioned it, that was, as you said, a lot of people just were shocked by it when that Raw and these other shows were going on with the WWE. What do you recall of how Vince and the company handled it, and how they moved forward to continue to do what they did?
Right, I was in the production end of the business at that time, and we met as usual, and just kind of went around the room, and everybody gave their thoughts and what should we do, and we finally decided to do the show the next night, and it was amazing. We were jam packed. The arena was there wasn't a seat available, and we just put the show on and did the best we could. I think we were the first and the only sports entertainment event that was going on at that time, and we aired and gave our condolences to all those who lost their lives, and everybody was still in shock, basically, what's going on, and but as Vince told us all, we're entertainment. Let's give the people entertainment. This is what they need more than anything right now, is to be entertained, and that's what we did, and the show went really well.
It must have been eerie, though, to be with that many people, because a lot of people, just were in shock. You everywhere you went, everyone just kind of had this, like, did this really happen? And what do you recall of the feeling, that the connection that the people that were there had with each other that night?
It was, I probably used the word too many times, but it really was united.
Yeah.
And it just, everybody was having a good time. It was like nothing had happened. After we, all went out on the stage through the gorilla position, and all stood out there, and we gave 10 seconds of silence, and from that point on, it was entertaining, and everybody was having a good time, and when they went home, they, for those 2-3 hours that they were in that Houston arena, they didn't. Hopefully, they weren't thinking about what had happened that day before, and that's what we were trying to do. And a lot of us were stuck there. We couldn't go anywhere. The airports were closed. They were we had a hotel luckily for 2 or 3 days. A lot of the superstars had rental cars and they just drove home. They basically, as soon as they were done, they got their cars. Some guys shared rides with others, and some of the ladies, everybody, are you going this way? Are you going that way? And we all kind of got back to where we our loved ones.
Yeah.
And it was good to get home and hug your loved ones and be home and know that you were there for them and what was going through their minds. And I'll never forget when I got on the airplane and I was on the aisle up in first class, and there was a gentleman next to me who was rather terrorist looking. I don't know what nomination
what his ethnicity was.
He was. But when I first got to the airport, I went to the restaurant and got something to eat, and they gave us plastic forks and knives and spoons. And I thought that was quite strange. And but they the security was already on the alert that no silverware in the airports, especially past security, and we didn't know if they were still terrorists, in airports or on airplanes, and so we got served our breakfast, and when I unfolded my napkin, we had metal silverware, fork, knife, and a spoon, and I looked at it, and I looked at the guy next to me, and I thought to myself, go ahead and try it. If you're going to try to make your way up to the cockpit up there, this soldier here is going to give you a hell of a fight. And so he asked to get out and go to the bathroom. And so I got up and let him go, and I didn't sit down. I went right up by the door where he went into, and I stayed there until he came out and got back into his seat. But that was just the military training that I had. Whenever I walk outside, as I do in a professional wrestling arena, especially when you're the bad guy, the villain, first thing I do is I look up at the buildings, and look around and see what's there, so I can prepare to know where I can run to, or if somebody's attacking us, where I can hide and where I can protect myself and anybody else that's with me. So, I was just, I probably was a little bit more aware that morning than I was any time, just because, and it was a bad thought in my mind, just because he, may have been an Arabic nationality, but I just, put my guard up.
Yeah. Well, everybody was certainly on edge, and for a long time to come. But you mentioned you're a soldier, and folks, a lot of people have what we call gimmicks or whatever their character is. There's never been anybody who's been more natural at being the character he became than Sergeant Slaughter, because he's the real deal. Many people know, maybe they don't, but you are an actual Marine. You were an E6. You were a staff sergeant and a DI, as they say, a drill instructor. How did you end up in the Marine Corps?
Well, I was in high school, and I wanted to become a professional football player, but our school, I was a great, patting myself on the back. I was a great natural athlete, and football was one of my favorite sports. And to this day, I was the most valuable player of my football team, both my junior and my senior year of high school, and I was a lineman.
Wow.
So most of those awards go to quarterbacks or running backs or receivers. sometimes once in a while a linebacker, but never a defensive lineman. Of course, our school was so small that we had to play every second of every game. You know, we were on the
both sides
kickoff team and the offense, defense, and we never won. Once the game started, we never got off the field, and I just had a love for football and played it well. And we used to have to tell the referees. My coach would go to the referees before the game and take them into the locker room and show them tapes, films, I should say.
Right.
Back in those days, Super 8s.
Right, yeah.
And things like
the projector on the wall.
And they would say, now, see this kid here, number 75, was my sophomore year in high school. Was my number was 75. And every time the ball would be hiked, I would always move with the ball. And a lot of times I would get a flag because they'd say, oh, you're offside. But this showed the referees that I wasn't going outside. I was just going with the ball.
You're just that quick.
I just had the natural instinct, and I was right on the ball, so I saw it. And that was a pretty classic thing, that you have to show referees that here's this 15-year-old kid that is already looked like he should be in the pros, And I loved it. And as I said, my school was too small, so we didn't really get any scholarship things, and so it just, I just said, well, I talked to my dad. He was a Marine, and he was at PI, Paris Island, and he said, you should make a decision. Once you get out of the Corps, if you decide to go with the Corps, you don't have to go in the Corps. You can go in the Army or the Navy or the Air Force. And I said, no, Dad, I'll go where you went. And he said, then you can maybe use your, use that to go to college and better yourself. So, of course, I did. And it was just, it was natural for me there also. I was always leading everybody in back then, I have to let everybody remember that I was only about 190 pounds then. So I was a pretty good, athlete. And I just had that natural, no give up type way of my of living and playing and do everything I did. And so I got to where DIs were telling me, kid, you ought to be a DI. And I said, I don't want to be doing what you guys, in my mind. I didn't tell them this. I didn't want to have to, put guys through what they were putting us through. But finally, it came that I did. I went for it. And during my time as a DI at Paris Island, my junior DI came in one morning, and he said, Sarge, he said, did you watch TV last night? I said, no, I didn't. He said, well, there was a show on with Steve McQueen and Jackie Gleason. And he said, Jackie Gleason's character's name was Sergeant Slaughter. And I said, yeah. He said, he reminded me of you. And he said, I'm going to start calling you Sergeant Slaughter. I said, no. Don't do that. I said, we have enough trouble, And he said, no, I'll just do it on my own, So it got to be, that was my kind of my nickname with all the other DIs and things.
Who knew?
And that's how the name started.
Yeah.
And so I just when I got out to do I was on leave, and a friend of mine was a sports writer, and he was going to do a story on a pro wrestling training camp up in Minnesota where I lived, where I grew up, and my it was Bert Gagne, Billy Robinson.
I mean, at this point, Sarge. How old are you? Because you come back. I think you served 6 years, right? Were you in the Corps?
24.
Yeah, okay.
Going on 25.
And you go back, to work with your dad? Was a roofer?
Yeah. Yeah, my dad was a farmer to start out with, and then he decided he wanted to move up to the big city of Minneapolis, and so we moved there when I was a young boy. And he took up 2-3 jobs, to make ends meet, and so he used to take me to the wrestling matches. When first time I ever remember a wrestling match, my parents lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. They lived in at a house where they were on the first floor, and the landlord was in the upstairs. And my sister and I would sleep on a fold-out couch. But first we would go to bed in their bed, my mom and dad's bed. And once we fell asleep, my mom and dad would take us out to the fold-out couch and put us out there. And that's where we would wake up. So I was laying in bed with my sister, and I woke up and I heard this screaming and hollering, and couldn't figure out. I'm guessing I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, maybe younger. So I crept out into the living room, and there my dad and a bunch of his friends were watching this television, and they were yelling at the television, that referee's blind. What's wrong with that guy? He can't see anything, And I hate that guy. And I'm watching it, and it's a wrestling match. And so every Saturday night, I would kind of pretend I was sleeping. I would sneak out and watch wrestling behind the chairs. Finally, my uncles, they saw me and started letting me watch it. Yeah. And so my dad would take me to Minneapolis Auditorium, and we'd watch the wrestling going on, and so I was into it at a young age, and one of the big things that we would do on a Saturday was my mother would take my sister and I to the grocery store, and we could pick out a TV dinner or a pot pie of our choice, and we would make that and have our TV trays, and we would all watch wrestling together. That was our family time on Saturday. Yeah. Because my dad worked so many hours, but when it came to wrestling, he didn't do anything. He was, for an hour and a half, he was watching live wrestling, all-star wrestling from Minneapolis, and that was it. Yeah. And that's how I got kind of involved into the wrestling of it. So when my friend had invited me to this training camp, he and I used to go to the matches, and we would watch it. So I said, yeah, I'll come, and watch it. And I was kind of helping my dad out on a roofing job. And I said, Dad, is it okay if I go leave early today? I'm going to go to a wrestling training camp with Virginia and Billy Robbins. He said, oh, really? He said, yeah, go. Yeah. So I left, and I met my friend, and we went. I figured we were going to go to this, gymnasium and watch this demonstration of pro wrestling training, and we ended up out in the middle of nowhere, close to where I lived, at a barn, and we drove up, and there was 4, 5, 6 cars around the barn, and we walked in. A couple other reporters came, and we walked in, and there was cows and horses and chickens and ducks and there was this ring set up. It was a boxing ring because it had 4 ropes. I didn't know that at the time, but and there was a little white light bulb above it, and you could hardly see anybody in the ring. But so these guys were just going at it, doing a lot of calisthenics, and it was kind of cool weather out.
Yeah, and, it's Minnesota.
I looked in the ring, and I'm looking at 5 or 6 of the guys that are training, and I wrestled them in high school, and I said, geez, I beat them all. And they're going through a pro wrestling training camp. Hell, I better look into this,
Yeah. Sarge, I want to take time out to talk about our new sponsor, Mack Weldon, because Mack Weldon is going to rock your world when it comes to some very essential items in your wardrobe. Must-have items like underwear, socks, and shirts. Think about it, guys. How many brands of underwear have you gone through that ride up, squeeze your boys, make it a swamp down there? Come on, be honest. Well, I have just solved all your problems. Mack Weldon started from scratch, engineered their own fabric, redesigned every centimeter of their underwear with its fit, the stitching, and the waistband that perfectly adjusts to your body. And there's some items that can stink, like underwear and shirts, but it doesn't have to be that way because of one word: antimicrobial. That's right, antimicrobial. It's a big word that is tough to say, but you don't have to say it. Just wear it. Mack Weldon also has a line of silver underwear and shirts that are naturally antimicrobial, right? Which means they eliminate odor. But don't just take my word for it. Check out their website. I did. And I was amazed by how many items besides their incredible underwear that Mack Weldon has. They have underwear, as I just mentioned, socks, shirts, undershirts, hoodies, sweatpants, and a lot more. The website makes it so easy to shop too. And listen to this. They want you to be comfortable. So if you don't like your first pair of underwear you buy, you can keep it. And they will still refund you. No questions asked. So it's time to get comfortable with Mack Weldon. And because you are a loyal listener of Primetime with Sean Mooney, when you place your first order, you're going to get 20% off. That's right, 20% off. Just go to MackWeldon.com and enter the promo code PRIMETIME. That's PRIMETIME, PRIMETIME, and you're going to get 20% off your first order. Mack Weldon will be the most comfortable underwear, socks, shirts, undershirts, hoodies, sweatpants, and more that you will ever wear. And did you know that, Gagne was a big name? I mean, did you know this was the big promoter in Minnesota?
Oh, yeah, I would.
So, yeah, and it was quite a collection of athletes there. And I know that you knew Ric Flair then from high school, right? Yep. Ric Flair.
Right. Yeah,
he was one of them.
That was one of them that was in there, Ric Flair, and who is Ric Flair today?
Yeah.
Ken Patera, Greg Gagne, Jim Brunzell, the Iron Sheik, who was Khosrow Vasari at that time.
Uh-huh.
Khosrow was about 180 pounds, just wasn't an ounce of fat on him.
Yeah.
And there's another fellow by the name of Bob Bruggers, who was probably the greatest athlete that I ever saw in Minnesota in high school sports. All three sports or four sports, he was just all-state. So I'm watching these guys and thinking to myself, why am I not, what am I doing in the Marine Corps when I could be here maybe making some money? Because, I thought they made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so next thing I hear, well, how about a volunteer? And, I looked around, and, of course, I'm the only one that doesn't have a pad and paper and a camera. And,
stand out a little bit, huh? And you're like 6'6", so whatever.
Yeah. Being in the Marine Corps and a DI, volunteer was a word that meant you're in trouble. Whenever you said, I need a volunteer, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So I knew I was probably going to be in trouble. So I kind of did the old Robert De Niro. You talking to me? you looking at me? You want me?
Me? So, don't see anybody else here.
I get into the ring and I've got an old pair of white like saddle shoes almost. That's all. I didn't have a whole lot of clothes, at home. And
the idea is, Sarge,
I had a suit coat on and a winter jacket on, and so I get in the ring and I'm kind of slipping and sliding because my shoes are slippery. So I just said, "Can I take my shoes off?" And they said, "Oh yeah, whatever you want to do." So of course they put holes on me. Gagne put me in a couple of different holes and maybe tap and yell Uncle Sam a few times, and so he was getting his kicks out of it.
Yeah, they're trying to stretch you.
Yeah, they stretched the heck out of me.
Right.
And so I went to get out of the ring, and Vern Gagne says, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Well, I don't see any reason to stay in here." And he said, why not? Was it too tough for you? And I said, no, I just, I'm letting you put these holes on me. You're not giving me an opportunity to not, give up.
To avenge yourself.
Is that right? So, what do you think you can do? And I said, well, I think I could probably do pretty good, as long as you don't have to put the hole on me first. And he goes, is that right? Well, why don't you get down on all fours, the wrestling position, and we'll see what you got. I said, okay. And so I get down, and the first thing I'm thinking of is, well, I'm going to put some holes in my knees of my pants because they're thin dress pants. So I said, oh, what the hell? So the first two words I hear is, Rick, get on him. The first three words, Rick, get on him. And that was Ric Flair, who, of course, Ric Flair. And I hear Rick go, sorry, Coach, I got a bad shoulder. He said, don't give me that. Get on him. So Rick gets on me, and I was proud as a peacock. So as soon as they said wrestle, man, I went this way and that way, and I, of course, give Rick his due. He'd been working out for 3 hours before I got there. Yeah. But so I pinned him, and boy, did the place got kind of quiet. And so Vern walks over and grabs Rick and throws him over in the corner and says, Ken, you get him. Now, Ken was the weightlifter in the Olympics. So I get down on all fours, and they say go, and I escape from Ken. And now I'm really hearing silence. You can hear a pin drop.
Yeah. Wow.
So Vern Gagne just says to Billy Robinson, who was the Empire champion from I guess they called it the Empire some type of champion, and he's a great wrestler.
Well, he was a hell of a shooter too, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, British Empire champion. So he had a few choice words to say before he told me to get down on all fours, and called me every name you could think of. And some of them I hadn't even used in the Marine Corps. But,
wow.
So I get down, and as I go down on in the wrestling position, he decides to drop his shin against the back of my ankle and break my ankle for me. So I came up, swinging, the mud, blood, the beer. Yeah. Here's a guy trying to break my leg. I got to get back to boot camp here, and I don't need anybody breaking my leg. So I went after him, and I got him down, and I got the better of him for about 5 minutes, and they broke us apart. Then he leg dove me, and I got the better of him again. Got his mouth a little bloody and his ear a little bloody, and he had my nose bleeding, and they finally broke us apart. Took me outside with my friend, and Vern Gagne said, "Man, kid, where'd you learn to fight like that?" And I said, "Well, I was a high school wrestler, football player." He goes, "Yeah, where?" And I said, "Here in Eden Prairie." He goes, "Eden Prairie? Really? What's your name?" And I said, "My name's Bob Remus." He goes, "Remus? Your father, Rudy Remus?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "He put the roof on my house." And I said, "Yeah, I know." And he's going to be happy that I met you today. He said, "Well, you say hi to your dad, and if you want to be a wrestler someday, I can't put you with this group of guys, although you did pretty well. They're 8 weeks into it already. Wow. But if you want to try it, Chris Taylor's getting out of the Olympics soon, and we're going to have another camp." And I said, "Well, that's fine. I'm in the Marine Corps right now, and I'll let you know. But right now, I want to get back in that ring and finish off what I started." I said, "That guy tried to break my leg, break my foot." And he goes, "Well, you don't need to worry about him. You'll have plenty to do with him if you decide to go through the camp." So he said, "Just whenever you're around, come on over and watch and do whatever you want to do and see if you're interested." So I said, "Okay." So I left and went home and told my dad what had happened. And he says, "Oh, really?" And he was like, clapping his hands. And he said, "Were you going to do it?" And I said, "I don't know. What do you think I should?" He goes, "Yeah." I don't want you to be a roofer the rest of your life. And you don't know what you want to do as far as football, and this would be great, you know. So
were you still in the Corps at this point?
What's that?
You were still in the Corps at this point, right?
Yeah. I decided not to re-up, and I basically gave my notice and went back home and worked for my dad, and finally found out from Vern Gagne when he was going to have another training camp. And then I went through the camp with Chris Taylor and a guy by the name of Paul Pershman, who was Buddy Rose.
Oh yeah.
And there was about 38 other wrestlers that started. One was a referee that was already in the business, and all but the referee that was already in the business, they all quit. And the only other one that made it through was Buck Zumoff, but he was, you know, way behind us. Because Vern Gagne had a live wrestling show on Saturday nights, and he made an announcement that Monday morning, if anybody wanted to become a professional wrestler, to come out to the barn, and he gave them the address and all that. And there must have been 100 people, 100 men, different shapes and sizes, and they all wanted to be wrestlers. And Buck Zumoff was the only one that made it through, but he was. Like I was, he was 8 weeks behind already, so he had to wait for the next year's class with Ricky Steamboat and Steve Olsenowski and a few of those guys.
So when did you get through the camp, and it's amazing you hear a lot of these stories of guys that go through these and they start with 40 guys and there's 2 left when it's over. So obviously you made an impression on Vern Gagne, but how long before you actually started stepping into the ring with the NWA and AWA? That's about, what's that, in 72, around there?
Yeah, I'll go back a little bit. During our training camp, Vern Gagne and Billy Robinson had to go to Japan for 4 weeks. So we were already 8 weeks into our training camp, or 9 weeks. And so Vern told us that 2 wrestlers were going to come and continue our training. And Billy made a list of all of our calisthenics and everything like that. You know, we were doing 500 free squats and 500 sit-ups, 500 push-ups, and everything was 500. So before all this happened, when I was a young boy, back before 9/11 and all that, you could go to the airport and go right up to the gate and wait for people to come off the planes.
Yeah.
So I was probably about 8, 9 years old, and we were waiting for my aunt to come off a plane, and another plane landed, and people started getting off, and there was a wrestler by the name of Joe Scarpello, and they called him Jumpin' Joe Scarpello. And my dad said, "Bobby, look, there's Jumpin' Joe Scarpello." And I said, "Yeah, it is." And Joe was all tan and just muscular and just a human specimen. So my dad said, "Let's go over and meet him." I said, "No, I was kind of a shy kid, still am." And so he said, "Well, come on, I'll take you over there." So I was kind of like, had my head down and stuff. And so he said, "Jumpin' Joe," and Joe was so happy that somebody, knew who he was and all that. And he said, my son wanted to meet you. And I said, "Hi, how are you?" And he said, "All right, you want to carry my bag and take it out to the car?" And I said, "I guess." And so I hauled his wrestling bag or whatever it was out to the car, and I'll never forget, there was this white Cadillac with the big fins on the back, probably a 54 or 55, something like that.
Yeah. And
this beautiful woman, blonde haired, and met him, and must have been his wife. And so we said goodbye. He gave me his autograph, and when we went to say goodbye, he said, "So what do you want to be, Bobby, when you grow up?" And I said, "Football player." And so he said, "You want to be a football player? No, you want to be a wrestler, don't you?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, that's what I want to be, a wrestler." So getting back to the training camp when Vern and Billy decided they had to go to Japan. The first wrestler that came to train us was by a guy by the name of Jack Pesic. And Jack was, they called him Whiskey Jack. And he would get into your face about an inch from your face and start talking to you, and saliva would fly out of his mouth. So you had a pretty good shower by the time he got his point across.
It's like a DI.
Yeah. So he trained us the first day, and we started. He had a list that Billy Robinson gave him of all the things that we had to do, the calisthenics. So he said, "What's free squat?" So we showed him. So okay, so we would do 50 at a time, and then we would do something else. So we started doing the 50 squats, and Jack was doing them with us. And so we got done, and we used to like stretch and do some other things, and then we'd start doing 50 more. So Jack had a pencil behind his ear, and we started doing 50 more, and he goes, "Whoa, whoa, 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 what are you guys doing?" And I said, "Well, we do 50 more." He said, 50 more? How many are you supposed to do? And what does it say on the paper? And he looks at it and goes, 500 squats. And he takes the pencil and he scratches on the paper, and he said, "It says 50 here with a typographical error." Because, Jack was retired, and he didn't really want to, do much of anything but show us how to be professional wrestlers. He wasn't into the kick our butts and kick our names.
You get in shape on your own.
We went through Jack for about a week, and I just told everybody that was left, I said, I'm going to do these on the side, because when Billy and Vern come back, God knows what they might, do to us. So we were kind of doing it before Jack would get there. So the first week was just kind of rumbling around, and so we got into the ring, and as I said, one of the trainees was a referee. So he says to his name was Bill Crouch, and he said, "Bill, I want you to referee a match between Bob here and I." And I said, "Oh, okay." So he said, "You know what a collar elbow hookup is?" I said, "Yeah." So he said, let's do it. So we locked up, and he kind of threw me back a few times, and was tapping my belly and moving my arms here and there and telling me to loosen up. And I didn't know what loosen up meant. I was just doing what I thought was supposed to be done. So finally he said, "Okay, let's have a match." So we walked around, and so he said, "I'm going to be the bad guy." And I said, "Okay." So we locked up, and he's tapping me around, and he says to me, "Top wrist lock." And I said to him, "Top wrist lock, okay." And he goes, "Top wrist lock." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do you know what a top wrist lock is?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, put it on me. Give it to me." I said, "Okay." So I put him in a top wrist lock, and he's walking around the ring and tapping my stomach and hitting my leg and hitting his arm and trying to get out of the hold, and I got it in pretty snug. And so all of a sudden he falls down on his back. And he looks up at me, and he looks at the referee, Bill Crouch, and he goes, "Bill, did you see what he just did to me?" And I'm listening to all this, and Bill said, "No, what?" He said, he pulled my hair. Bob pulled my hair. And I said to myself, "That lying son of a bitch. I didn't pull his hair." And so he says to Bill, "Are you going to break it or what?" And so Bill looks at me. He said, "Bob, did you pull his hair?" And I said, "Bill, I didn't pull his hair. Honestly, God, I didn't pull his hair." And he said, "Well, I'm going to have to make you break the hole. 1, 2, 3. So I let go. So Jack gets up from the mat and looks at me and says, "All right, come on, let's go. Let's lock up." So we locked up, and he's doing the same thing, patting me around the belly and my arms and my leg, and he says, "Top wrist lock." And I said to myself, "Top wrist lock? I wonder if he wants me to put him in a top wrist lock." So he says it to me again, "Top wrist lock." He's spitting all over me, and so I put him in a top wrist lock, and again he starts patting me going around the ring, and next thing I know, down on the mat he goes again on his back. And I said, what the hell, is he tripping or falling or what's going on here, you know? So he looks at me and looks at Bill Crouch, and he says, Bill, I'm telling you, this Bob's no good cheater. He pulled my hair. And I said, Bill, I'm telling you, I didn't pull his hair. And Bill said, Bob's going to have to break the hole. So he gets me to 1, 2, 3. So I let go, and now I'm getting hot. Now I'm getting mad. So Jack kind of rolls up and looks at me, shakes his head, and he gets up. And he said, let's do it one more time. So we lock up, and he, trying to get me to loosen up a little bit. And finally he gets me where he wants me, and he says, top wrist lock. So I top wrist lock him, and he starts moving around the ring. And the next thing you know, I feel him going to fall down again, so I let him go. And he fell all by himself.
Yeah.
And I looked over at Bill. I said, see, Bill, he's a lying son of a gun. I didn't pull his hair. He's falling on his own. And so Jack just rolls over and he says, all right, kid, we'll work on this another day, you know. And Jack was just into wanting to teach us, as I said, all about professional wrestling, not so much calisthenics.
Yeah, your first lesson in being a heel.
Yes.
And you weren't getting it.
Exactly. Yeah, I wasn't getting it. But so, you know, we went through this for, a couple days, and then he said, another guy's kind of join us tomorrow. So I said, okay. So I'm in the ring doing my, exercises and calisthenics and my squats and everything. And I looked in the distance, and here comes another wrestler, kind of a short guy and baldish kind of guy, and got a bag with him. So I figured he must be the wrestler. And as he gets closer and closer, I said to myself, Jumpin' Joe Scarpello. Oh my God, it's Jumpin' Joe Scarpello. Now this is quite a few years later.
Yeah.
And Joe's retired, basically, and living in Omaha. Joe Vern gave him a ticket to fly up, and so he gets in the ring, and he's still in pretty good shape, and starts doing all the calisthenics with us, and but when we got all done with that, he said, "Who knows how to do a fireman's carry?" And I raised my hand. He said, "You can do a fireman's carry?" I said, "Yes, sir." So he said, "Well, do one on me." So I did one on him, and he gets up and he goes, "That's a hell of a fireman's carry. Where'd you learn to do that?" I said, "In high school wrestling in the Marine Corps." And he goes, "Well, let's do that again." So that's all he wanted to do was have me fireman's carry. He fireman's carried me. I'd fireman's carry him all day long. And so finally, we got ready to go, and he said, "Excuse me, Bob, do you have a vehicle here?" And I said, "Yes, I do." I said, he said, "I'm staying at the YMCA. Would you mind giving me a ride?" I took a cab over here. I said, "Yeah, I'll give you a ride." I said, "You don't mind an old roofing truck, pickup truck?" He said, No, it's fine. So I said, "Well, I usually stop and work out, get a little swim in and a little hot tub." And he said, "That's fine. That'd be great. Oh, you mind if I go with you?" I said, "No, it'd be good." So we went. So we're in the hot tub, and finally I look over to him and I said, "Joe," I said, "I don't know if you remember me or not, but years and years and years ago, you came into Minneapolis, and I met you at the airport, and I carried your bag to the car." And he goes, "You're that little boy."
Wow.
I said, "Yeah, you remember me?" He goes, "I remember you. You said you wanted to be a football player, and I told you to be a wrestler, and here you are, and here I am training you."
Wow.
Joe now, I'm 6'6", and Joe's about 5, maybe 5'9", at that, and not the same guy that I saw when I was a young boy. He was a giant when I was a young boy.
Yeah.
Now I'm a giant to him.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't get it out of his mouth fast enough that here I am training this kid that told me he was going to be a wrestler, and he can fireman's carry like nobody in the world, you know. So he stuck on me like glue all through the 4 weeks or 3 weeks that he was there. And as soon as Vern and Billy got back, he couldn't wait for them to see me give him a fireman's carry.
Yeah.
And he was just bragging on me. And so that was his last day, and he left. So I didn't see Joe after that for quite a while, and I was home from my first apprenticeship out in Vancouver, Canada, for Christmas break, and Vern called me up and said, I have a guy canceled out on me in Omaha. Would you be able to drive to Omaha while you're home and take his place? I said, sure, I'd be more than happy to. So I figured I'd get a payday, and so I drive to Omaha. And as you know, when we go into the dressing rooms, there's a sheet on the wall that tells you what match you're in. And usually the first match is the main event. So I'm looking down, and finally I see my name. I just went as Bob Remus, and I looked at my name, and next to my name was Jumpin' Joe Scarpello. And I went, my God, here I am, you know, wrestling Joe Scarpello. You know.
Full circle.
So, we had the first match, a 10-minute time limit, and of course they asked Joe to do me a favor, and so there was no qualms about it. So when we got into the ring and we started having our match, I just said to myself, I can't beat Joe Scarpello. I just can't do this. So every time, you know, back in those days, we would get a countdown. You know, 5 minutes to go. 4 minutes to go, 3 minutes to go. So pretty soon, and lo and behold, you'll never guess who the referee was, Bill Crouch. and so he said, Bob, you better get going. We got 1 minute to go. You know, I said, we'll get it. So finally it got down to where I was what we call false finishing and getting the best of Joe. And so I threw him into the ropes, and Joe gave me a small package and a couple other moves, and time ran out. And the bells were in, and Bill's coming up to me, and he goes, boy, you're in trouble. You're supposed to, and they got another draw, you know, later on in the show. And so I just didn't say anything, and I went back to the dressing room, and the promoter came up to me, Jack Dusick, and what happened? I said, I couldn't hear the damn thing. I don't know. It's just something happened. I couldn't hear it. So in the back door comes Joe Scarpello, and he motions for me to go into the shower room, and he shakes my hand. He says, thank you, Bob. This is my hometown, and everybody here knows me, and I really appreciate that, you know, what you did. And I said, Joe, I appreciate what you did, you know. It's just little things like that you you think about when you're doing shows like yours here, and I just had to bring that up.
Well, and it just shows, Sarge, the respect that you had for this business even then, and it stayed with you, you know, throughout your career and to this day. To move things along here a little bit, though, you were in a wonderful place for professional wrestling, and I don't know if you knew it at the time when you entered the business, but that Minnesota territory and you know, the areas that you did work in there was a tremendous place to enter the business, and so many names came from that area. You know, the Hennigs, and you just go on with the list. Tell me about that time in your life. I think you spent about 8 years before you ended up for your first appearance with the WWF, I think it was at the time. But what was that experience like when you became a professional wrestler, and here you're working for Gagne?
Right. During our training camp, you know, Vern did a live show on Saturdays from 6 to 7:30, and once a month he would have a live show at the Minneapolis Auditorium, and so they'd always do their little angles, you know, live, and try to get people to come, and there wasn't a lot of, you know, advanced ticket sales back then. so you'd see someone like the Crusher and the Mad Dog Vachon had this unbelievable run-in on a live television show, and most of the time the heel would get the best of the baby face, and of course everybody would say, "Let's go, we're going to go see what happens," and it's just an hour and a half. The matches started live at 9 o'clock at the Minneapolis Auditorium, so the wrestlers would just jump in their cars, go to the auditorium, and continue. And so people like us, we would be sitting at home, and my dad would say, "Bobby, grab your coat. Marlene, my sister, and my mom, grab your coats. We're going to the match. We're going to the match." So that's how they did it back then.
Yeah.
It was, and so I would go down and watch the matches live. And so one night, Vern said, "Okay, I want all the trainees with Marty O'Neill." I don't know if anybody out there listening remembers Marty O'Neill.
Oh,
I know there's a lot of people that migrate from Minnesota and the Midwest down in the Arizona area, and they must know Marty O'Neill.
Yeah.
But Marty O'Neill was going to do a interview with the trainees. So we all get up there, and of course I got this beautiful blue, navy blue shirt on, brand new. Just got it out of the bag, and looking pretty good, So everybody hides behind me, and they said, Marty looks at me, he goes, "Well, Bob," I'm looking at Marty O'Neill, and I'm thinking, here's a guy I've been watching all my life up to that point, and he's going to be interviewing me as a professional wrestler or trainee. And Marty was only about 4'11", maybe 4'12". He wasn't much taller than my mother was.
Yeah.
And so I'm standing there, and all of a sudden the red light goes on, and they said, "Okay, 3, 2, 1," and Marty starts talking, and here we are with the trainees and blah blah blah. "What's your name?" "I'm Bob Remus," and he starts talking to me about the training camp, and I'm telling him everything I can think about, and we get done, and he looks at me, he says, "Kid, you're a natural. You're really a natural." And I said, "Well, thank you. I'm really nervous." When that red light came on, I started shaking. He said, "Well, you got it." So I walk off the set, and the lights were just awfully hot because they need to have, as people know in the TV business, you got to have all that light.
Right.
So I walk off, and I go downstairs because we're going to do some training after the show is over. And I take my blue shirt off, and my body is the same color as my blue shirt. The dye, the sweat came off my body. I had the same color on my body as I did in my shirt. God. And I started feeling around in my mouth, and I had this like sand in my mouth, and I took my finger and I wiped all these white particles, and I was so nervous that I chewed on my teeth, and I had parts of my teeth in my mouth.
Oh.
So that was a difficult thing for me.
So you had stage fright from the beginning, and did it stay with you for a while?
Yeah, I had it for a while. After we got done with training camp, we didn't have the facilities like they do now, where they train, and they train not only wrestling, but they train how to talk and find their characters and different situations. And so I got done with my training, and as I said, 3 of us made it. And Vern said to me, "You got 2 choices. You can go to Charlotte, North Carolina, or you can go to Vancouver, Canada." And I said, "Do we have a list of who's down in Charlotte?" So he shows me a list, and I see all these big names, And I said, "Well, that's going to be kind of tough to break in down there. Yeah. So maybe I'll do Vancouver." So I said, "I think I'll do Vancouver." He goes, "All right, I'll tell Gene Kiniski you're coming out there, and Sandra Kovacs." And so I said, "Okay." So I make my way to get ready to make my first apprenticeship out in Vancouver, Canada, and I'm starting to think about a character, and I always loved superstar Billy Graham. So I said, "You know what? I had pretty long hair then, and so my sister was a beautician, so I went to her shop, and I said, 'Can you give me blonde hair?' She says, 'Why?' And I said, I want to be Beautiful Bobby Remus. And she said, Beautiful Bobby Remus? I said, yeah, I'm going to do the superstar Billy Graham look. I'm going to have all these psychedelic colors on and show my muscles and be the stud, She says, okay. So she dyes my hair, and she gets it all done, and she takes the cap off, and my hair is completely gray because she put the wrong type of solution.
Suddenly, old Bob, old beautiful Bob.
I look like Grandpa Bob. So she had to redo the whole thing, and so now my hair is getting a little bit, crispy. Yeah. But I finally make my way out to Vancouver, Canada. My dad and we drive out there in one of our roofing trucks, and he's going to fly back. So I get out there, and he decides to leave, and they told me what hotel to stay at, and it wasn't the greatest hotel, and so I was there like 3 days early. So I kept looking in the newspaper to see what the wrestling matches were, and with my name, it's going to be in the newspaper. So I kept looking and looking, and finally the day of the matches, it was a Monday night, they advertised the matches in the newspaper, and everybody was named on there except me. I didn't see my name. They had like Gene Kiniski against Jack Briscoe and a couple other big names. Mm-hmm. And so I finally go down and I see plus one other match. I said, that's me. Plus one other match.
He started at the bottom. Right?
So I go and I get there early and walk in, and Jack Briscoe, NWA world champion, and anybody that knows Jack Briscoe, he was a stud.
Yeah.
And I walk in, and he's sitting on the bench in the locker room smoking a cigarette and reading a book. And I walked in and I walked up to him, and he stood up and he said, I'm Jack Briscoe, NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And I went to shake his hand, and I said, I'm Bob Reed. And before I could get my last name out, he says, I know who you are. And I said, you? He says, yeah, anybody that beats up Billy Robinson, I have to know who they are. There's a bigger shooter than I am around here. I need to know what his name is.
Wow. You already had a reputation.
Yeah. I had a reputation, didn't even know it, that I was a shooter, and Jack Briscoe was, impressed. So he said, are you here? He said, I'm here all week. Are you here? And I said, yeah, it's my first night. He said, well, I don't have any way to travel. You mind if I travel with you? And I said, well, I got a roofing truck, pickup truck. He said, that's even better. You got some country music in it? And I said, we'll find some. So he said, we'll be fine. So I traveled with Jack Briscoe my first week in the business, and learned quite a bit about, a few of the politics, but mostly what a wonderful man he was.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many personalities that crossed your path throughout your life, especially early on, that you would have these relationships throughout. Two, I just want to mention that I found really interesting is that you had an influence on Jesse Ventura. Everybody knows he's from Minnesota, ended up with his political career, but early on he wanted to be a wrestler, and you actually helped him find his early gimmick that stayed with him pretty much.
I did. The first couple of weeks I was in Vancouver, Canada, after Jack had left and everything, and I was doing this beautiful Bobby Remus character, and one night I was wrestling a fellow from Minnesota called Buck Ramstead, and he was a tough type of a cookie, and no flash, just kind of black and white. And so I was told by Vern Gagne that when you're in the corner and you're introduced, have your back to your opponent, and then when your name is introduced, you turn around and you throw your hand up in the air and you give it the old, the good guy wave, and people cheer for you. And so I'm waiting for the announcer to, he says, in this corner, Buck Ramstead from Minnesota, and everybody boo, boo, boo. And now I'm waiting for the announcer to announce me, and I hear people laughing. And I'm waiting for my name to be announced, and people are laughing and laughing. So finally I turn and look over my shoulder, and I look at Buck Bramstead, and he's blowing me kisses. And I went, wait a minute. That's not the character that I...
Yeah.
Beautiful Bobby Rivas is not that type of character. He's a tough, he's a strong, good-looking guy, and all of a sudden people are laughing and laughing. So after I beat the hell out of Buck Ramstead,
he wasn't blowing kisses at you anymore, huh?
So I went home and told my wife. She was wondering what was wrong with me, and I said, I'm not going to be Beautiful Bobby anymore. She goes, why? And I said, people think I'm, something I'm not,
Yeah.
And she said, what do you mean? And I said, well, they're blowing me kisses and stuff. And she said, oh my God. No, you don't want that.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, Diane, I'm going to the barber shop tomorrow. I'm getting my hair cut, and I'm going as Bruiser Bob, and I'm wearing all black.
Yeah.
And she said, go for it. So I started being Bruiser Bob Rivas, and then I went to Bruiser Bob. And I got a chance to go down to Portland, Oregon on every Tuesday of every month. They had a special show down there. So Gene Kiniski said, Don Owens would like to have you come down. He's heard about you and he wants you to come down. So I went down. And I go into Portland for a match, and I'm Bruiser Bob. I got all black on. I got my hair short. And I kept thinking, should I change my name to Bob Slaughter, or should I just leave it as Bob Remus? I'll just leave it as Bob Remus. Bruiser Bob. So I thought, well, Bruiser Bob Slaughter wasn't too bad. I'll keep doing what I'm doing. So I have a match, and I come out, and John Owens says, damn, kid, you were really good. He said, when you get done up with Kiniski there, come on down. Come on down. I got plenty of room for you. So we finished up and went down to Portland, Oregon from Vancouver, Canada. And one of the I had a real good 6 to 8 months there. Did really well. Worked with Jimmy Snuka when he was first starting, and Dutch Savage and Bull Ramos, and a bunch of great performers out on the West Coast there. Yeah. And I was getting ready to go, and I decided I was going to go back home and then maybe try Louisiana. So right before I was going to go, as I gave my notice, I told Don I was leaving. He said, "Oh, I hate to see you leave, but it's been a good run, and I hope we both made each other a good living." I said, "Thank you very much. I'd like to come back someday." And my wife and I thought, well, maybe this was a place we'd like to move to someday. And so I'm getting ready to the night before I'm getting ready to leave, Don comes into me and says, "Bob, would you come in and talk to me for a second?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I got this new kid by the name of Jesse Ventura, and the guy's hell of a wrestler. Can't talk.
What?"
And I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "I was wondering if you could stay a week or two longer and be his tag team partner and do all the talking." I said, "Okay." So first night, Jesse comes in, and I got all these. And I see Jesse's attire, and I said to Jesse, "You know what? I got a whole box of tights and things that you just might love." And he goes, "Well, Bob, yeah, bring him down." So I brought him this box of outfits, and I mean, some of them I hadn't even wore; they're brand new, and some were air painted, air sprayed, and I had like a couple of snakes coming out of my tights up, and it just wrapped around my legs, and he just loved all of them, and he said, I'll take him, Bob, I'll take him. And I'm good for it. Us Minnesota boys. I said, "Yeah." So we went to do our match, and we got into the ring, and Jesse didn't know a hip lock from a wristwatch. I mean, he just didn't know what he was doing in there. And so we won the match, and we went up to what they called the birdie position or something like that, and we to do our promos. So we got up there, and I said, Jesse, I'll start it out, and I'll give it to you, and then give it back to me. I said, okay. So we started doing the promo, and I said, here's my boy from Minnesota, and I put Jesse over like everything, and so I gave him the microphone, and he just blew the building apart.
Really?
People were yelling and screaming at him, and I mean, he could talk the chrome off a bumper. He was going like crazy. And we got all done, and I didn't even take the mic back. I said, there's no way I can follow that. So I just let the guy say, okay, well, we'll be right back.
Yeah. Well, the guy told you he couldn't talk, right? And here
he couldn't talk.
He was a natural.
You know,
and he never stopped talking after that.
They hadn't quit talking.
No, not to this day.
So I got back and had a meeting with Don, and I said, Don, you don't need me to talk for this boy. Yeah. I said, yeah, he's got it. And so I stayed for about another week and brought Jesse all of his outfits and got him on his way. And I went back to Minnesota and ended up going down to Louisiana as Bob Slaughter. That was my first use of Slaughter. I liked the name Slaughter because my junior DI gave me that name, but I never thought about the Sarge at all. Yeah, and so I went down to Louisiana, and things just were okay. And I just was still frightful of the camera. Every time that red light would come on, I couldn't take it. So I got sick, and I got kind of the hypertension type thing, and I get spots all over my body, and
wow,
and I have some problems, and so I just told my wife, and the doctor told my wife and I, it's got to be what you're doing for a living. You must not be comfortable with it. I said, well, I'm comfortable in the ring and everything, but when that red light comes on, I freeze. And he said, well, I think you're looking to freeze into a heart attack. He said, your blood pressure's way up.
Wow.
You got ulcerated colitis, and you're in bad shape. I would not consider this much longer for a profession. So I was like dejected, and so we packed up and drove all the way back to Minnesota, and went back to work for my dad. And one morning, we got to the job, and it was raining like crazy, and so we all went home. And I walked into the duplex that we were living in, and turned on the TV. And as soon as I turned the TV on, da 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 da, I look at the TV. It's black and white. The DI starring Jack Webb.
Yeah.
And I went, oh my God, this ought to be good. And so I started watching it. And here's this guy, Jack Webb, a drill sergeant in Paris Island, of all places, and just berated these poor soldiers without one use of profanity.
Yeah. Oh.
Because it was a television show.
Yeah.
It was a movie. And I'm thinking, what a character. I mean, what a great heel character that would be. And I kept thinking about it, Sergeant Slaughter, the DI, And so I ran down, got my locker box out, I got my swagger stick, and I got my campaign cover out, got my whistle, and got a bunch of things out, and got a couple old T-shirts out. And when my wife got home from work, we had the Polaroid cameras. I said, honey, take some pictures of me as Sergeant Slaughter. And she said, Sergeant Slaughter? I said, yeah, it's my new wrestling character. And she said, wrestling character? I thought you were all done with wrestling. I said, well, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try it. So we take pictures. I take him to work the next day. I show my dad. He goes, that's good. I like that. I've never seen anything like that, So I said, well, can I, if it's going to be raining tomorrow, I'm going to go down and talk to Bergagna and see if he'll think about maybe booking me. He said, okay. So, of course, it was raining, and I went down and walked into Vern's office, and Vern wasn't there. And his associate, Wally Carver, was there. He said, hey, Bob, what's going on? And you feeling like going back to wrestling? I said, yeah, I got a new character I think I want to try. He goes, what is it? I said, Sergeant Slaughter, USMC, DI. And he looks at me and he goes, I don't know. They tried a few of those kind of characters, G.I. Joe and this guy and that guy. And he said, they never really did much, And I said, well, I thought it might. So I dejectedly, I go to leave and I go to the elevator. And that elevator opens up and there's Bergagna. He said, hey, Bob, what's going on? So I had this new character I was thinking about showing you, and Wally didn't think it was very good. And he said, well, how are you feeling? I said, I feel good. I just, back to work with my dad. And he said, well, what's the character? And I said, well, I'll show it to you. He said, well, come on in. So he gets behind his desk and looks at a few of the phone calls these guys do, and he says, okay, tell me about the character. So I start going through, what I did in the Marine Corps as Sergeant Slaughter this time, not as Sergeant Remus.
Yeah.
And so he's looking at me, and I figure I better stop and get the hell out of here before he throws me through the 11th floor window. And so he comes out behind his desk and he goes, that is incredible. And he starts yelling at me just like a drill instructor would, and acting like I was a private. And he's yelling at me. He says, I hated my drill sergeant. He said, I was in the Marine Corps, and I hated him. And he said, this is great. This would be a great character. He said, but I can't have you do it here. Let me send you down to Kansas City. And he said, can you go? I said, well, not right today, but I can maybe go in a couple of weeks. He goes, okay, I'll call Bob Geigel up and get you down there. So I told my wife, I'm heading down to Kansas City. I'll let you know how it goes. So I pack up a car and head down to Kansas City, run into Bob Geigel, and go to one of the shows before I had to do anything. And the next day we had to do TV, so I sat around and watched. Didn't do much, and Harley Race was there. He had just lost the NWA championship, and so they said, okay, let's see you do a promo. So I got up and I started barking out Sergeant Slaughter promo, and I got done, and Harley Race came over to me and said, kid, that's the hell of a gimmick you got there. He said, I could see you and me, So I was happy, that happened. And then, lo and behold, I get sick. I get the flu.
Oh.
So I'm down there for like 3 weeks, completely dehydrated, and I had no money. I'm taking what money I have, and I go to a pancake place, and I order a thing of pancakes in the morning, and that's all I ate the whole day, and what I could get down. And what I couldn't get down, I take back to my room.
Yeah.
But then I started going around with Harley Race, and Harley Race, is anybody that knows listening, probably one of the greatest ring generals ever in this business. And he and I started out a little program, and we went Kansas City Memorial Hall, went 1 hour to a draw. Next night, 1 hour to a draw, St. Joe, Missouri. And then the next night, Wichita, Kansas, 1 hour to a draw. Well, came all the way around, and Harley says, we're going 90 minutes this time. He's telling, he doesn't even tell me, he's telling the people, on his promos.
Yeah.
I got Slaughter, I'm taking him 90 minutes. And so 90 minutes, Kansas City, Missouri, Memorial Hall, St. Joe, 90 minutes, If I hadn't lost enough weight the way it was, I was really losing the weight.
Is the character really over? I mean, is it when you go into these places? Is it?
The character's over.
Yeah.
The character's over, and the more the character was over, the more Harley Race was loving it.
Oh.
And he just couldn't stop having matches with Sergeant Slaughter.
Yeah.
So we went around the loop for 90 minutes. Then we finally got to where it was no time limit, and we went about maybe 50 minutes to 70 minutes, depending on what Harley wanted to do. And then we would finish the match where he would get his hand raised. But that's where the Sarge, I got in front of the camera, Sean, and when that red light came on and I was, being Sergeant Slaughter, I had no fear in the world. Yeah. I was going like crazy.
I find that really interesting because, folks, when the Sarge is referring to that movie, The D.I., and it was made in 1957. It's black and white. You should check it out sometime. It is awesome. Center that door, idiot. I mean, Jack Webb is just so awesome in that movie. And this inspired you. Of course, you had Sergeant Slaughter already that had just been percolating back in your mind that it was going to come out someday. But I really find it interesting. You said that once you became that character, that stage fright disappeared because you were someone else. I think that's what you're saying.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I was portraying a character,
yeah.
And as I did in, I could never have been a drill instructor unless I pretended to be somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I was just too kind. I don't want to say I was a kind guy, but I was a shy guy. And for me to at 0400 get those guys out of the racks and put them through pure hell, I had to become a character. I just I got talked into being a DI. And it just wasn't for me, so I had to create a character, and that's where I guess my junior DI saw that Sergeant Slaughter character when he saw Jackie Gleason. And although I saw the movie years and years later,
mm-hmm.
Jackie Gleason was not at all like Sergeant Slaughter that I portrayed.
Right.
He was more kind of a baby face, and Jackie Gleason was kind of heavy set and dark, greasy hair and cold back, and it was just, but it just,
great name.
Clicked.
Yeah, the name.
So I ended up going down to Atlanta to do Sergeant Slaughter down there, and when I got down there, Ole Anderson said, "Geez, Bob, I love the character, but I just got no place for a heel right now." And I'm just going to have to say, I'm sorry. If you want to hang out here and wrestle, that's up to you. He was from Minnesota, and he knew I was from Minnesota, and he liked me. He heard a lot of good things about me. He loved my work. But he said he just didn't, he had too many, heels. So I was with Pac Song. We were the tag team champions there. And right after Ole had told me this, I got a call from my wife, and she said, "Your mother's really sick.
Oh.
Got cancer, and so you better come home." So I went to Ole. I said, "Your problem's solved. I gotta go anyway, and I gotta go right now. And so I can't drop the straps. I can't do anything. I gotta get out of here." So I left my car at the airport. Tag team, half of the tag team belts was in the trunk of the car. I flew back to Minnesota, and my father was taking it real bad. So he said, "Bobby, you got to take over the roofing company so I can be with your mother." I said, "By all means." So I put the Sarge, in the mothballs, and I tended to my father's roofing business, and I'd be up on roofs at, 7, 8 o'clock at night, watching airplanes going over, and I go, "Geez, I wish I was on that damn airplane right now going somewhere to wrestle," but I just did what I had to do for my mother and my father. And so it ended up that a guy from Hawaii, Francis, was a promoter there, and he called up Vern and said, I'm having a 6-week tour, and I'm looking for a masked man. And he said, "Do you know anybody that would come over?" So Vern called me up and said, "Would you like to go to Hawaii?" I said, "Who won't want to go to Hawaii?" He said, "Well, it's only 6 weeks." I said, "Only 6 weeks?" He said, "But you have to stay there the whole while." I don't know. My mother is sick, and so I went and talked to my mother and my father. My mother said, "Bobby, you got to go. You got to go. I'm fine. I'm doing good. Your dad got other people that can help him, and you got to go. That's an opportunity for you to do." So I went over there and I wrestled as the executioner under a mask. And when I got back to Minnesota, Bert Gagne called me up. He says, "What's this? I hear you're a pretty good masked man." He said, "I thought the Sarge was good, but he said the masked man was pretty good too." And I said, "Well, yeah, I enjoyed it, but I said it was hard to get used to it because you can't see. All you can see is in front of you. You can't see the side. You can't see behind you. But it was something I really enjoyed. I worked a lot with Rick Martel and just had great matches with Rick. And just had a time of my life over there. Mm-hmm. And so I came back and went back to work with the roofing company. And I got a call from Vern. And he goes, "Bob, are you able to work at all?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you, Vern, I'm running a roofing company, and I got to be home, every night." And he said, "Well, I'm having trouble with Don Jardine. He was a super destroyer. He just gave me a lot of problems, and I'd like to fire him and hire you." And I said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "I have an airplane," he said, "and 8 guys can fly on this airplane. If I can get you to the arena, wherever we go to, and get you home the same night, could you possibly think about working?" I said, "Maybe a limited schedule, but yeah." He said, "Well, it's going to be pretty heavy because he's in all the main events, and you'll have to take right over from what he is." And I said, "Okay." So I talked to my dad about it. He said, "Well, as long as you can get home every night." So there I was at 0400. I'm out with a roofing crew, and about 2:00, I jump in my car and head to the airport, Flying Cloud Airport in Minneapolis, or out in Eden Prairie. And fly to the arenas, wrestle, and come back. And Vern had gotten rid of Don Jardine, and Don Jardine, of course, was one of those guys that fought the law, and everybody respected him and loved him, all the wrestlers. So here I walk in, taking his spot, and completely different look, different character, different way of working. And the first night that I wrestled is in Winnipeg, Canada. And my manager is Lord Alfred Hayes.
I was hoping we'd get to his lordship.
Yeah. And so we teamed up with Mosca. And we're taking on Vern Gagne and Billy Robinson, my 2 trainers. So we go into the dressing room or into the shower room, and Vern's asking Lord Alfred, "What do you think we should call, Bob? What, he's got a mask on, but I can't call him Super Destroyer. Everybody knows he's not the same guy." So Alfred said, "Well, how about Super Destroyer Mark II?" And Vern says, yeah, I like that. What's Mark II mean? He goes, "Well, it means that he's more advanced. He's more advanced." "Well, where should he be from?" "Well, I think he should be from Gibraltar." And Vern says, "Gibraltar?" He says, "Yeah, it's a big rock out in the middle of nowhere in the British Islands." And Alfred's kind of, giving me the needles because he was best friends with Don Jardine. Yeah. And he didn't know me from Adam,
yeah, right.
So I got this mask on that my mother made. She's got cancer on her dying days, and God bless her soul, she's sewing up a mask for me, and she makes his face looks like it's all glittery and shimmery. And Alfred looks at me and he says to Vern, "Super Destroyer Mark II looks like he's got egg on his face." And I went, "You son of a..."
Yeah, you want to kill him.
Who are you?
Yeah.
English noble guy, telling me I got egg in my face, and he's still burnt up. He's mad at Vern. He's mad at anybody that do anything to do with Vern, and replacing his good friend, Don Jardine. So I take Alfred aside. I said, "I'm not sure what that was all about, but I'm sure I'll please you eventually." So he said, "I should hope so." And so, of course, we go out and we have the match, and we come back, and he comes over to me, and he said, I must apologize to you. What is your name? And I told him, and he said, well, Robert, you are a very, very well-oiled machine. He said, and he went through the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Anybody that knows the Lord Alfred Hayes, you fall in love with him, and when you're around him enough, you start talking like him. And so we started traveling together, and whenever I would check in at a hotel, I would check in as Matt Burns. It's a kind of a funny thing.
Alias.
Like you get a Matt Burns when you're wrestling. And so he would never use the short name. He would not call me Bob or Rob. It was Robert. And when I would check in as Matt Burns, he'd go, Matthew, what time shall we leave today? And I said, well, Alfred, how about this time? He goes, very well, Matthew. I will see you then. Toodaloo. And so we got to be, excellent friends.
Throughout life, throughout his life.
Yes, and we just hit it off, and I took him home, introduced him to my family, and we loved each other, and we just had the greatest time together. And so it was time for me to kind of get demasked after 2-3 years, and of course Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens were the World Tag Team Champions in Minneapolis at that time, and just like you said, an array of tremendous talent. Not only came out of Minneapolis, but everybody wanted to be in Minneapolis, the AWA, because you'd only work 12 to 15 times a month. In your home almost every night. So,
and you're talking but talking about Lord Alfred Hayes, and most people and the people who listen to this podcast, of course, they're huge fans of the 80s and 90s, and they saw his lordship appearing in the announce booth, and he would also do many other promotional things and did play-by-play, and was basically, he was a baby face, I guess, at that point. But if people don't realize what an incredible wrestler he was. And he was a judo champion. He was a real lordship. He was a real lord, and but he was an incredible heel. I've watched several of his promos that I've been able to find, and no one ever really saw him as that. But he was a tremendous heel. And do you remember some of the stuff he would cut? You saw him as a manager, but also as a wrestler, was just amazing. Tremendous.
Yeah. He was a tremendous soccer player, played cricket, and as we said, usually the Queen's English.
Yes.
And
no profanity ever.
We'd go golfing together, and he would miss a putt. Instead of saying, instead of saying any foul language, he'd look at the ball and he'd point at it because it didn't go in the hole, and he'd go, "You nasty brute, you nasty fellow," and he would never say a bad word, and it just was hilarious being around him all the time. And he always would end his matches with a Scotch, no ice, and a ginger ale.
Yes, that's right.
No ice.
Neat.
And that's how he would end his match in the locker room, and then he would take a shower, and off we go. And I just had the greatest times, and he taught me so much about life and in the ring, out of the ring, being a wonderful father that he was. He taught me how to be a good father. It was pretty natural for me, but he just told me things like, when you're on the road and you come home, have little gifts for your children and let them know that, that you're thinking of them. And I said, well, I do. And he said, well, they don't know that unless you tell them, and he loved his children so much.
Oh, yes.
And he just, whenever he had a chance, he would call his children up and talk to them. And it was funny, Pat Patterson was going to New York City, and Pat and his friend Louie and I and Lord Alfred and Nick Bockwinkel and Ray Stevens, we'd all golf together. We had just so much fun together. And I said to Bluey one night, I said, there's a character that I used to portray called Sergeant Slaughter. He said, I've heard of Sergeant Slaughter. You were Sergeant Slaughter? I said, yeah. He said, well, what are you bringing it up for? I said, well, Pat's going to New York. I was wondering if you think he would take some pictures of me and show them to Vince McMahon, which I'm talking about Vince McMahon Sr. And he said, well, of course he would. So, the first time I met Pat Patterson and Louie, we were getting off the airplane in Minneapolis, and this car pulls up, this nice Lincoln Continental, and there's a guy driving it, and Pat Patterson gets out, and he goes up to the guy, gives him his bag. The gentleman puts the bag in the trunk, and they say goodbye, and off they go. And I said, now who was that? And they said, well, that's Pat's friend. And I said, what a great, he's got his own chauffeur. Holy cow, what a beautiful car, and dressed well. And I said, that and I just got along so well with Pat.
Yeah.
And Louie.
And Louie, yeah. Louie was his lifetime companion, and just a great guy, and was involved in a lot of what went on behind the scenes, and helped Pat in his career along the way. And when I worked for the WWE, that's where we hung out at Pat's house. They had this, they called it Chez Gimmick.
Yeah.
That house they had, you were there with all the windows. But
sure.
Really, we zoomed really far ahead here, and I want to get more into how Sergeant Slaughter arrived in the WWF. But Pat Patterson is the one who took pictures to Vince Sr., and he liked what he saw.
Yes, I approached Pat, and I said, I heard you going to New York, and he goes, yes. I said, I was talking to Louie, and I was wondering if you would take some of these photos, and I showed him Sergeant Slaughter photos, and he goes, Matthew, everybody now is calling me Matthew. He goes, Matthew, this is you? And I said, yeah, that's the Sarge, And he goes, oh my God, I've heard about Sergeant Slaughter, but I didn't know it was you. And said, yeah, that's me. So I'd be more than happy to take him with me. So Pat goes to New York for his first television, and comes back, and we got a round of golf set up, and I meet him, and we're ready to tee off. He goes, Matthew, I took those photos with me, and I gave them to Vince McMahon, and he likes the idea. He wants you to give him a call.
Yeah.
So I said, really? He goes, yeah. So I called, and we're talking about Vince McMahon Sr. now. And so I called him, and he said, yes, I got the photos, and I'd really like to have you come for a tryout. And I said, well, I'd be more than happy to. So I was getting at the end of my Super Destroyer Mark II character, and getting ready to be unmasked, and so it got down to where I was going to be unmasked, and they took the mask off me, but I sprayed my face completely white, sprayed my hair completely black, and when I lost the match at the Minneapolis Auditorium, I took the mask off, but Lord Alfred Hayes threw a towel. I'm sorry. At this time, Bobby Heenan was my manager. Lord Alfred Hayes and I had split, and so Bobby Heenan threw the mask over my face, and off I ran. And so the next week on television, they said, "Okay, that's it." Gene Okerlund says, Wally Carbo came out. You gotta show us your face and tell us who you are. And so I take the towel off my face, and I'm Bob Remus. Everybody in Minneapolis recognized who Super Destroyer Mark II was.
Right.
And what's your name? And I said, my name's Matt Burns. So it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing.
Yeah.
And one of the times that Gene Okerlund ever messed up on live television, he had to kind of hide behind my character a little bit. And so I was shoulders going up and down. But anyway, back to
Vince Senior.
Vince Senior.
Yeah.
And so I go in and I go into Allentown, Pennsylvania. The first guy that meet me at the door is Lou Albano, Captain Lou Albano.
Yeah.
Man, I can't wait to have you start here. I said, well, I'm just coming in for a tryout. He said, I heard a lot about you. I think you're going to do good. You know, and Lou never stopped talking. And so I went to the locker room, and they just kind of basically said, just hang out, and when we're ready for you, we'll have you go out and do something. So finally, I'm there all day, all night. At that time, we were doing 3 tapes a night. So the first hour went, second hour went, third hour went. You know, people were getting, seeing everything that they had to see that night. So finally, Vince Senior comes up to me, and you could tell when he was around because he had 4 quarters, and he would always, jingle them in his hands. That was kind of his nervous thing. And I heard these coins coming my way, so he said, "You might as well get dressed and show me what you got. I want you to go out to my son out there. He's going to do a promo with you, and I want to hear what you sound like, what kind of a promo you do." And he said, "You know who my son is?" And so I said, "Well, I've seen him, but I never met him."
Yeah.
So he, opens up the door. He said, "That's him right there." So I, okay. He was working with Bruno Sammartino in the play-by-play. So I get dressed and getting ready to go out, and still didn't hear. Finally, Vince, I hear the quarters jingling. He comes over to me. He said, "Okay, after the next match, I'm going to have you go out and do a promo with my son. I'm not going to show it live or anything, or I'm just going to record it for my own purposes. Is there anything at all that I can do to set this up for you?" And I said, "Well, I went to my bag and I pulled out a cassette tape, and I said, 'Would you play this cassette tape?' And he goes, 'Well, what's on it?' And I said, 'The Marine Corps hymn.' And he goes, 'You mean the Marine Corps hymn, like da 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 da?' I said, 'Yeah.' He said, 'What, you want me to play that before you go out?' And I said, 'Yeah, I think that would, if you wouldn't mind.' And he goes, 'Music? Never thought about music.'
You're the father of theme music.
Yeah,
Sarge.
So I had my own theme music.
Yeah, you're one of the first, I'm sure.
This is the first time they've ever done it. So
he really made that was his reaction, like, music.
Yeah, that was his reaction. the quarters stopped jingling, and he's thinking, and he's looking up in the air, and he's thinking, and he goes, "Music? Well, yeah, let's give it a try." So he goes out to the production truck, and Kevin Dunn's father was the producer at that time. And so he comes back, and he said, "Okay, it's all set up. They're going to play it, and you'll go out and do a promo with my son." I said, "Okay." So he says, "Give me about 5 minutes if you got that in you." I said, "Yeah, I think I can do 5 minutes." So they start playing the music. So I go to go out, and Vince puts his arm across my path. And I didn't realize what he was doing, but he was listening to the reaction of the people. And you could hear the people kind of mumbling and kind of rumbling. And so he said, "Okay." So I had a whistle, and I had my cigar, and had my sunglasses on, and my swagger stick. I was dressed up as a Sarge. I had my campaign cover on, and out I go. So I blow the whistle and take the cigar out of my mouth and blow the whistle again. And I stopped, and I said, "You maggots better stand on your feet." It was like a pin dropped, and all of a sudden it just started roaring. And people, they didn't know me from a hole in the ground. And I started making my way over to Vince, our boss of today, and as on my way over there, I stopped a couple of times. I called people pukes and scums and slimes and maggots, and finally I got over to Vince, and he goes, "Well, here we are with Sergeant Slaughter." And I stopped him right in his tracks. I said, "Shut your hole, puke! Who gave you permission to speak?" I'm right in his face. I'm in his face, and he's like kind of stunned, and he kind of backs up a little bit. And I said, "Where are you going, boy? Where are you going?" And so he stands and comes back to me, and you know, he used to do his promos with slippers on because the shoes would hurt his feet. So I step on his toe, and I said, "Who gave you permission to speak, maggot?" And he goes, "Well, I said, shut your hole, puke. Did I give you permission to speak?" And he's standing there. I said, "Stand at attention." He starts standing at attention just like a boot loop. And I said, "Put those shoulders back, chest out. You call that a chest?" And you know how Vince was a hard worker. He worked out day and night. That chest out there at his arms. And he could hardly get his sports coat on or off because his arms were so big. And he can't sell me standing on his foot. I got combat boots on, standing on his foot. And so I heard through the grapevine from Pat and a few other people. I said, "Yeah, it's Vince McMahon's son. He gets $200 haircuts. They're making good money in New York. They're making good money." So I take my swagger stick and I go through his hair and I get into his face and I said, "Who cut your hair? Ray Charles?" He's like getting all bent out of shape, and I do this promo, and I just berate him, and I berate everybody at the arena and at home, and whoever I'm talking to in the camera. And just as I go to leave, I take a big swag, a puff of my cigar, and I blow it into Vince's face.
Ooh.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
You could see the smoke going out of his ears. He turned completely white. I mean, purple. And he was just fuming. And I didn't know that he didn't like smoke. Cigarettes or nothing. And here I am, a nobody to him, to anybody there, and I'm blowing smoke in his face. So I go back and I, yelling at people are trying to come over this damn railing. This is 3 hours after all that thing, and they want to kill me.
Yeah. And
so I look back at Vince, and he's like shaking his head, growling at me, and wiping his face off because I spit in his face, and he's making his way over to Bruno to do one more match or two more matches before they get to go home or whatever they were going to do. So I get back into the dressing room and I sit down in my chair, and all the boys that are still there, they're kind of like shaking their head, kind of laughing, like,
"Wow,
that poor guy.
What did we just see?"
Before he even got started, So I'm sitting there taking off my combat boots and getting ready to take a shower or whatever, and I hear the quarters. I hear the quarters jingling, and all of a sudden I see Vince Sr.'s shoes walking around my chair and around me, jingling the quarters. So finally he stops in front of me, and I look up at him, and he just stares at me. And I can hear all the other guys kind of laughing and kind of elbowing each other. Look, he's going to berate him. Hang on a second. Let's wait and see this. So he does his finger, and he says, "Come with me. Come with me." So he takes me into a little room that was part of our shower room. It wasn't much bigger than a phone booth. And he gets in there, and he walks around me some more, jingling those quarters, and finally stops in front of me, gets right in my face. I'm ready for him to give me a tongue lashing. And he goes, "Sergeant Slaughter, that is the greatest character I have ever seen in my life."
Wow.
I've been in this business a long time. He said, "I got to have you work for me right now." He said, "Even my son hates you." He said, "I got to get you in here right now." I said, "Well, thank you, Mr. McMahon, but I'm still working in Minneapolis." He says, "Oh, don't worry. I'll call Gags up. I'll call Bert Gagne up. I'll get you out of there. You're on your way out anyway, aren't you? Pat told me you're on your way out." So, yeah. So he said, "Okay, well, I'll be in touch with you. I'll get a hold of Bert Gagne." So I go back and I start taking the rest of my stuff off, and everybody's kind of like waiting for the reaction, and Pat comes in. He said, "You are unbelievable. And he takes me into the same room I was just in with Vince. He gives me a hug
I can't believe you're so good.
He's overwhelmed. He said, I can't believe what you did. I can't believe it. Vince hates you. He I don't know. He said, Vince, he took it as a shoot, And so he just hugged me because he was so proud that he brought somebody to them that, got over just instantly.
Wow.
So I went back to Minnesota and got the call from Vince Sr. and he said, I want you to come in. I want you to be in the Garden. Your first match is going to be in Madison Square Garden, and it's going to be in January. No, it wasn't in January. It was, I think it was December or something like that. And so I go and give my notice, and Vern already knew about it. And Vince said, you're going to come in and do 6 weeks or 8 weeks of television. You're never going to appear anywhere but on television. And the first match you're going to have is in Madison Square Garden against Bob Backlund, the world champion.
Jeez.
And, I said, oh, my God, this really is quite a change, from what I've been doing. So, of course, I go in and I do the TVs, and I get over like a son of a gun,
Right from the start, huh?
Just right off the bat. I mean, before you even get into Madison Square Garden, they want to kill you. So I'll never forget. Lou Albano came to me and he said, "Kid, not too many people other than Bruno Sammartino can say that they sold out the Garden and the Forum. Next door they used to have a place called the Forum where they had a screen up,
like closed circuit. Yeah, closed circuit
for overflow of people that could get into the Madison Square Garden." So I said, "Well, that's got to be a good sign."
Yeah.
I had my first match with Bob Backlund, and before I have my first match with Bob Backlund, I'm on my way to Rochester or to New York driving, and I get somewhere near New York, and I stopped, called my wife, and she said, "You need to call Vince McMahon right away." And I said, "Okay." So I called Vince. He said, "How far are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm just about to go into New York." He says, "Oh, good." He said, "Tonight I want you to stop in Rochester, New York, and wrestle the main event there." I said, okay, not a problem. And he said, "Okay, and I'll see you Monday night at Madison Square Garden." Okay. So I go to Rochester, New York, go in, and as again, I look on the wall to see what match I'm at, and main event, Sergeant Slaughter versus Bob Backlund. What the heck? I'm wrestling Bob Backlund in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
I didn't know what they did there. So, I go out and I have a match with Bob Backlund, and the damn riot starts. I hadn't even been in the territory more than 2 hours, and I already got a riot going. And, all the wrestlers come out and they help me get back, and we got to get the police escort, get me out of the building. And next night, that was a Saturday night. Sunday I was off, and Monday I'm in Madison Square Garden, and just never been in New York more than just to do TV, so I didn't know too much about what we were doing. But boy, it just started right off the bat, and we just went from there and got it going.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I wish we could talk about all those encounters, but you were in the ring with Bruno Sammartino, and Andre the Giant was in his heyday then, and you spent time in the ring with him as well. That must have just been a whirlwind, because reaching the biggest stage at the time must have just been incredible.
I got married to Andre the Giant. He fell in love with me. He knew me from before. He had met me in Portland, Oregon, and did a bunch of battle royals with him and some tag matches against him, and he just fell in love with me. And when he saw that I was in New York, he told Vince McMahon Sr., put me with him every night. And so my first night with Bob Backlund in Madison Square Garden, we had a match where I put him in the Cobra Clutch. And by this time, after 6-8 weeks of television, when I put the Cobra Clutch on, people knew what it was. And they knew Bob Backlund was in trouble. So I got close enough to Arnold Skolin.
Yeah.
He was Bob's manager, and he had a cigar in his mouth. And right before we went into the Cobra Clutch, I reached through and I grabbed his cigar and I broke it in half and I threw it in his face. And Bob Backlund came to get me and throw a punch at me, and I did a couple other things to him. I put him in the Cobra Clutch. Now Bob's, putting it over. He's going down to his knee, and they're lifting up his arm, and it looks like he's all done. And for people to start rioting, basically with Bob Backlund, you knew you were doing something right.
Yeah.
You knew the character was over because not a lot of people cheered for Bob, in Madison Square Garden, and he was over.
Yeah.
And he was, put in a lot of situations where the underneath card was probably, selling it out more than he was doing, but he was Vince's guy.
Yeah.
And so he's down to one knee, and they're lifting up his arm and his second arm, and he could hear the people stomping on the ground, and it was they're trying to get Bob to come back, and so Bob's starting to come up, and I get over by the ropes, and I put my foot on the rope without the referee seeing it, and I put Bob back down on his knees, and those people started coming. They were coming through the barriers. They were trying to start to come into the ring, and the next thing I know, I get over close to the rope again. Bob's starting to make his way up again, and just as I go to put my foot on the rope, Arnold Skolin knocks my foot off the rope, and I turn back and I look at him, and he belts me over the head with a chair. And of course, there's immediate disqualification. Yeah. So I sell the chair. I let go of Bob. He laid in the ring, completely out, and Skolin's in the ring, mad as hell at me because I broke his cigar and threw it in his face, and I was cheating. And he got in the ring to help just simmer down the people a little bit. But there's the world champion completely out. I didn't lose the match. I won the match. My hand was raised because Arnold hit me over the head with a chair. Yeah. The only thing I did get was the title. And so the people were believers. I mean,
good build up.
When he puts a Cobra Clutch on somebody, that's it.
Well, and then you're going to meet him that Monday, and then talk about build up, and those were the days. So you talk about heat, Sarge. Back then, you don't see that anymore. I mean, people you'd have to fight for your lives sometimes to get back to the locker room.
Oh yeah,
and cities all over the country.
It was storytelling. It was storytelling.
Yeah,
it was something that they could follow. It was kind of in slow motion kind of way.
Yeah.
And the harder the match was, like a cage match or a death match or a strap match, or the more those kind of matches you were in, the slower you worked. It was like Pat Patterson always told me, slow motion.
Yeah.
And if you ever watch the alley fight with Pat Patterson and I from Madison Square Garden, I think it was in 1981.
Yeah.
It's called the alley fight. You'll see a slow motion match, but everybody was on their feet through the whole thing, and couldn't get enough of it. And
you couldn't do that today. People don't. No. You got to be moving every set. You couldn't do an arm bar for 2 minutes or.
Well, that's what they had seen. That's what made the Sarge get over so quickly. Was here comes a guy that's 300 pounds, 6'6", doing drop kicks, coming off the top rope with all these moves, and I could do anything that a 200 pounder could do, even better. And I moved like a cat, and they'd never seen anything like that. They were watching Bruno Sammartino, like you said, with an arm bar, with a leg lock for 5-10 minutes. And all of a sudden, it's a faster pace, but it's still a story.
Yeah,
story was being told, and so I get back to the dressing room from Madison Square Garden, and Vince McMahon just can't get enough of me. He's hugging me. I'm talking about Senior.
Yeah.
And he says, Sarge, that was incredible, but I got some bad news for you. And I said, what? He said, Bob has to go to Japan, so you can't have a rematch with Bob in Madison Square Garden. I said, oh, geez. He said, but I got some good news for you. And I said, what's that? He said, how about working with Bruno Sammartino?
Wow.
I said, you're kidding.
Yeah,
no, I'm going to book you and Bruno. He said, Bruno hasn't wrestled for quite a while. And so I'm going to have to talk him into it, but I'm sure he'll want to work with you. So I get going, and about 2 days later, I get a phone call. Yep, you're all set. Bob's going to Japan, and Bruno and you are going to headline Madison Square Garden. So we have this match, and it's a complete different match than I have with Bob Backlund. Bruno is like a fire truck. I mean, he doesn't stop. He just go, and he just was that was his style. I guess he figured that's what he had to do with me. I don't know if he did that with everybody, but we ended up having a double count out, and people were coming, even though we had a double count, they were coming over the railings and they were trying to get at me, and lo and behold, I didn't know this for quite a while, but that was Bruno's last single match in Madison Square Garden. I had his last singles match. He had a few tag matches with his son and a couple 6-man tags, but I was his last single match.
And he was still in good shape then?
What's that?
Was he still in good shape then? I mean, he was...
tremendous shape.
Yeah.
He was tremendous. Unbelievable shape. And in fact, the night that I wrestled Bruno, my wife flew in to New York, and we were going to spend a couple of days in New York. And when we were going back to our hotel, and we had a bite to eat, went to our hotel, went to the Carnegie Deli, which is
no more.
But,
yeah.
We got to the hotel, and we found out that John Lennon had died, got killed, got murdered or shot.
Yeah.
That was December 8th, so I always remember the date. December 8th was when I wrestled Bruno Sammartino. It was the same night that John Lennon died.
That's incredible. Just you go through these matches and you talk about, Andre liked to work with you. And, we've heard it many times. Either Andre likes you or he did not. And you did not want to be on that side of him. Why do you think he liked you, for one thing, and then why you worked so well with him?
Well, I think he liked me because I was kind of a man's man, and which Andre was, and he liked to play cards, and I played cards. I played cards since I was a little boy with my dad and mom and all our neighbors and things. We'd have card parties, and I played cribbage, which not too many guys did, and Andre loved cribbage and loved gin, and Arnie Skolin, played gin and played cribbage, and I actually started having gin tournaments and cribbage tournaments, and doing the double eliminations. Guys would put $100 in the pot, and you'd have to lose like twice in order to be out. So if you lost the first time, you could go back in the losers bracket and end up back in the finals. It was like a great thing to do on the side. And we not only do it in the locker rooms, but we do it in the hotels.
Yeah.
And
hours and hours. There was always cards.
Yeah. And Alfred Hayes loved cards.
Cribbage.
I'll tell you a quick story about Alfred. He was in Montreal, and I was living in New Jersey while I was working for Vince. And this is my second tour of duty with the WWE. And when I came in, they were so happy. They Vince and both Vince's and Pat and a bunch of other guys, we all went out after the matches and we had dinner, and they were having some drinks at the bar. And Vince Sr.'s just, Sergeant, I'm so glad you're back. Because back then you only stayed, 6 to 8 months to 9 months, not much longer, and then you would go. He didn't want to wear
to another territory.
And so I'm so glad you're back, and there's no better villain, no better heel in the business ever. And I'm hearing all this. And so I said to him, well, Vince, if you think Sergeant Slaughter is such a great villain, you ought to see him as a hero, a babyface. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, you've got the Iron Sheik from Iran. And I said, Iran, I should say. And you got Ayatollah Khomeini. You got the Black Hawks going down. You got the embassy and the hostage situation. I said, we never got a chance to punch Ayatollah Khomeini right in the nose for all that. No, we never got any retribution.
Right.
Why don't you let Sergeant Slaughter of the United States Marine Corps go after the Iron Sheik and just kick his ass for the United States of America and for all the wrestling fans? And he nodded his head, and then all of a sudden he starts shaking his head. No, Sergeant, you could never be a hero. You have to always be a villain. No way can you be a hero. And I look over his shoulder, and there's Vince, Jr., who's taken over the business.
Yeah.
And he's like, his saliva is coming out of his mouth, and he's shaking his head, yes, and he says, Pops, that's a great idea. It's a great idea. And he turns and he grabs Vince by the shirt, and he says, don't you ever do that. Don't you ever make Sergeant Slaughter a hero. I don't care. He's never going to be a hero. So he gets up and he walks away, and Vince comes over to me and says, don't worry about Pops. I'll take care of him. I love that. I love that idea. So I come back to become the hero. And before I did that, I'm doing some promos for the new magazine. It's called Victory Magazine.
Yeah. And
they had this kid watching television, and I'm in the television. It's hollowed out and all that. And he says something about Victory Magazine, and I tell him what he's, I put him down and make him feel bad. And so, Victory Magazine, and this was the first time that we started doing, merchandise and things like that. Yeah. And so I took Vince aside, Vince Jr. now. I don't want to keep calling him Jr., but Mr. McMahon, I'll call him Mr. McMahon. I went to Mr. McMahon and I said, are you going to go, in other countries with us? Are you going to go overseas with the Victory Magazine? He says, oh, yes. I said, well, my friend, Lord Alfred Hayes, is in my apartment. Alfred had been up in Montreal, was starving to death.
Yeah.
And I talked to him, and I said, why don't you come down here and stay with me until, you see what's going to happen. So he comes down, and he said, oh, thank you, Matthew. Oh, my God. I was up there with Billy Robinson, and I'm starving to death. And, you could see he had lost a lot of weight. And I said, don't worry about a thing, Alfred. We'll get things going. So he's at my apartment. So I said to Vince, Mr. McMahon, if you're going to go overseas with this, I got Lord Alfred Hayes sitting at my apartment. He does a great promo, and it'd be great for you to. He said, he's at your apartment? I said, yeah. He said, tell him this. We were in Allentown. Yeah. So I called up Alfred. He's at home, and Matthew, how are you? And he'd been in the Scotch a little bit, and I said, Alfred, can you drive over to Allentown, Pennsylvania? I think I got something for you. He says, oh, of course, Matthew, I will. So he shows up about maybe 2-3 hours later, and Vince takes him in and says, here's what I'd like you to do. I want you to do a promo about Victory Magazine. Now, he said, is there anything I can do for you? He said, do you have a cup and saucer? And he said, a cup and saucer? He said, yeah, a cup and saucer. And Vince goes, gets some cup and saucer, And Alfred looks at it, and he's kind of looking it over, and he goes and puts some water in it. Mm-hmm. And so they're getting ready to do their promo, and he's got his tuxedo on. So he said, okay, here's what I want you to say, and just use your own words, Albert. So Alfred does this unbelievable promo about Victory Magazine, and at the end, he takes a big sip of his tea. How he and he goes, Victory Magazine, so good with a cup of tea. and Vince comes over, he says, unbelievable, that's one take.
I love it.
He said, unbelievable. And he comes over to me, he says, thank you. That's great. And so next thing I know, Vince is asking me what Alfred's up to. And I said, well, he's not doing anything. He's staying at my apartment. He said, well, I got to put him to work.
Yeah.
So that's how Alfred got into the WWE.
Wow,
and
that's a great story.
Ended up into the office and into the production end of it, and helped so much, and got into Tuesday Night Titans with Vince, and being his Ed McMahon type character, and just was a delight to be around.
He had a major impact on my life. But I would have never made it in the WWF that first year if it wasn't for Alfred, because for some reason he took me under his wing, and it's funny because you mentioned nobody gets in easy with Alfred. Initially, he's very suspicious, but if you get past that, he was the most loyal, wonderful person you could possibly be around.
Yes, I shared a house with him in Stamford, Connecticut, on his last year or two with the WWE, and it was pitiful. He had a lot of head arthritis in his hands and his knees and his feet and his ankles, and to hear him get up in the morning. I slept downstairs in the basement. In the he called it the dungeon. The Matthew, you stay in the dungeon. And I said, okay, Alfred. And so I would hear him get up to go to work, and he would shower, and it was just painful to hear. And now I think of I would kind of go through the same thing before I had my hips operated on that he was probably going through, and it was just not fun to hear. But he ended up down in Texas, and he would not. When we started doing the Playboy with Hugh Hefner and having some of the lady superstars being in the magazines. In fact, that's another story. I don't know if we have time to tell that, but he just I would get the girls to sign, to Alfred and send them to him in Texas, but I never got any response. And it was kind of like him telling me that he didn't want me to see him like he was.
Yeah.
He had a place in Florida for a while, and then he gave it up. And I used to go down there a lot and visit him, and Pat and I and a bunch of the guys would go golfing and things like that. And then when he ended up in Texas, he just became a recluse, and I could never get him to return my calls.
Yeah.
And a fellow that I met at the Cauliflower Alley Club said that he was with Alfred his last few months, and that he was just kind of like curled up like a baby, and he just was like, his hands and his feet were all just not a very wonderful sight to see. And I'm kind of glad I didn't get to see it, but I didn't get to say goodbye to him. That's the only thing I did.
Yeah, and I actually, I'm not going to tell the whole story. I'll share it with you someday, Sarge, when we actually get a chance to see each other again. But I actually went to Dallas. I got on a plane. One of the people that, a neighbor who had befriended him, called me. And I got on a plane and went over to see him. And it was, at least I got the chance to say goodbye to him. But he was just a very private person. And I thought that, I think that once we actually got to see each other, sat down and talked, but it was the same way. I don't think he wanted me to see him that way, and that stayed with me. But I cherish the fact that I did get to see him, and I knew when I walked out of there that I wasn't going to see him again. He was right at that point. But we will share stories again about Alfred. I've kept you along.
Last time I saw him was at the Cauliflower Alley Club. They gave him an award.
Yeah.
And myself and Roddy Piper presented it to him. And he was in a wheelchair. And I was, the prankster. I'd take the wheelchair and I'd have it almost going through the door, and then I'd sidestep it, and he'd go, "Oh, Matthew, why? Be careful, And so we went up to, I got him up to his room, and I said, I'm going to go back down and see what Piper wants to do, and then we'll meet for something to eat, go have a drink. He says, okay, that'd be fine. So I came back up to his room, and his award was completely demolished, in the room. And evidently he just had a pity party and just destroyed that thing. And I asked about it later that night, and he said, well, Matthew, I just didn't want to have to haul it home.
That's awesome.
He said, so I figured if it was demolished, I wouldn't have to take it home. I had no place to put it. I had nowhere to put it.
Yeah. Well, I know, like me, I know you miss him every day. He was someone else that had such an impact on my life. I told you, but anyway, we will share stories again about his lordship. I've kept you a while, but we do have to talk about a couple of these runs that you had with the WWF because WWE, because they're legendary. You mentioned in '94 when you this run against the Iron Sheik, and the timing of it was perfect. You talk about heat. My God, I still remember, and I wasn't working for the company at the time, but this is when the WWF was beginning to really, the wave was beginning, and that you had been in rings before and had experienced heat, but I can't imagine you ever had seen it like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, the first time I was in the WWF / WWE, I left as the heel, as the villain, and I came back for my second tour of duty, and I did the run with the Iron Sheik.
Yeah.
When Vince told me that he wanted to do it, and he talked Pops into it, he came to me one night at Allentown, Pennsylvania, and he said, "Are you ready to do it?" And I said, "Do what?" He goes, "I want you to go against the Iron Sheik." And I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He said, "Sheik doesn't know you're coming. I don't want him to know. Blassie doesn't know you're coming." He said, "All I want to do is when the time is right, I'm going to hit your music." Now everybody's using music now,
right.
But we had to. So we used he said, "I'll play your music, and you go out and you challenge him." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "And give me your best General Patton promo."
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay." So I got 2 minutes to think about what I want to do and what I'm going to say. So as soon as he's leaving, he's ready to go. And as we all know, who knows Vince, that he doesn't let anything, hold him up too long. So. I first hour I went out, everybody booed me, hated me. My first, couple of weeks back, a couple months back. So now I go out to the first match and they're booing me, blah blah blah. And the Sheik goes out, does his deal, and so the third hour, the Sheik, he just did a promo. The third hour, Sheik is wrestling, and he's out wrestling some little baby face, and he just kills the poor kid. And he's beating him up and beating him up, beating him up, and all of a sudden I hear the music play. And I'm not even really watching. We didn't have monitors back then.
Yeah.
You had to either look through the door or hear what was going on. So all of a sudden I hear the Marine Corps hymn hit, and I don't even have my campaign cover. So I grab a baseball cap and I run out the door and I make my way up, and it was like the people couldn't quite understand what was going on. They were here, they see the Iron Sheik beating up this poor guy, and they hear the Marine Corps music, and all of a sudden it was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And it started getting louder and louder and louder, and here I come, and they were just like, dumbfounded. And all of a sudden I started walking toward the ring, and they were all like standing on their chairs. Go, Sarge! Go, Sarge! So I start making my way to the ring. Here comes the Iron Sheik. He doesn't know what's going on. Blassie doesn't know what's going on. So I said, Sheik, you want to mess around with somebody? Mess around with me. And we had a kind of an eyeball to each other and kind of said a few words to each other. And he walks off. Blassie gets him out of there because Blassie didn't know what to do. And Sheik is, he's like he walked into a closet. He didn't know where he was at. And so I get up and I help the kid out and get him out of the ring. And so I grab the microphone and I challenged the Iron Sheik to a match. I said, Iron Sheik, if you want to hurt somebody, if you want to wrestle somebody, I declare war on you, And there's one thing I did when I was a young boy in school, and when I was in the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts and in the Marine Corps, and I put my hand over my heart and I started doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, I'm telling you, it still brings hair up on my arms. People stood up on their chairs. They had their disposable lighters lit, and they're all saying the Pledge of Allegiance with me. And I got out of the ring, and I couldn't hardly get to the dressing room. They mobbed me. They just want to get a piece of me. And so I get back to the dressing room, and anybody who knows Allentown back then, it wasn't much of a dressing room. And they're about ready to tear the walls down because they're pushing and shoving, and you can hear them all, USA, USA. And back when I was wrestling the Backlund, I used to tell Backlund, call me Gomer. So he would start the Gomer deal. So they're all chanting, Gomer, Gomer. And I stuck my head out of the dressing room, and I was like with them, like Gomer, like Kurt Angle does, you suck, you suck. And I was going, Gomer, and I was smiling and happy, and they're all going crazy. So anyway, we have this run with the Iron Sheik.
It turned them in one night.
And, just went crazy. And so Vince says, I've got an appearance for you. This is like a week after. And I go to Harvard Square in Boston, Massachusetts for a bookstore for a signing. I think they were having the Victory magazine or some magazine at that time that they wanted me to sign. So I'm in the car with a guy that's Steve. He was a photographer with the WWE.
Steve Taylor.
And Steve Taylor, good memory. And so he's with me, and we're bogged down. We're about 3-4 blocks from the Harvard Square. Can't get through. So he said, I'll go see what the holdup is. So he's gone for about 20 minutes, and we hadn't moved maybe a car length. And he comes back, and he's like white. And he goes, Sarge, they're here to see you. I said, what? He said, the reason there's a traffic jam is there's thousands of people. I don't know what to do. I guess we're going to have to get you out of the car and walk. And I said, okay, Steve, no problem. Let me get my stuff on, So I'm dressing in the back of the limo, and I get out of the limo, and I head to the Harvard Square. And as I was telling you, my military background, the first thing I do is I look up in the buildings, and there's buildings with people everywhere. There had to be, I'm not exaggerating, 3,000 to 4,000 people just, on the ground. And then there was all these people in the buildings sticking out of windows, American flags, and just USA chants. And there's a picture that my youngest daughter gave me for Christmas one year that has an upper shot, a sky shot down on me with all the people. There's not a line. It's just the whole table where I'm sitting is surrounded. There's no end in sight.
Yeah.
And how she ever found that picture, somebody had it online and she saw it and she got it for me. And it's just an incredible explosion from going from the most hated villain in WWE history to the most loved, hero of all time. I got done with that. I went to TV for the next tapings in Allentown. There was 8 sacks, I'm talking sacks, of mail for me, just for me. And it was letters from people. People were sending me their fathers and their mothers, whoever they had served in the military, their utility caps, their medals, their pictures and money. Send me back an autograph, do this and do that, and I spent 3 days going through 8 sacks of mail. And I answered every damn one of them, and it was just an incredible, from Sergeant Slaughter, the most hated. I walked out for my first match after I'd done the thing with the Sheik, and there's big signs, Slaughter for president, Goldberg for president, and so we went through that whole thing, and then I left again, and then I had come back, and this was the era where Vince was starting to do the action figures and all those things. Yeah. And so I was living in Connecticut, and I got a call from my attorney who had a friend up in Rhode Island who worked for Hasbro. And so they said they'd like to meet with you. They're thinking about using Sergeant Slaughter in G.I. Joe. And I said, G.I. Joe, the cartoon? And they said, yeah. So I said, well, let's go up there. So I had my camouflage limo at that time. And we, my attorney and I, we drove from Connecticut up to Pawtucket, Rhode Island, pulled that camouflage limo with the American flags flying in the air on the front fenders, and stopped right in front of the office. And by that time, I told the driver to go around the block a few times, and so everybody saw that camouflage limo with my name on it. Yeah. And they come running out of buildings and wherever they could get out of. And before I could walk into the Pawtucket Hasbro headquarters, I had a mob scene already. So I walk in and we have the big meeting with them, and we're going in a new direction. We're going to do, want a real live character to be our spokesperson. Someone that really is a real person. We love your character. And I said, okay, so let's think about it. So before I left, I said, well, just remember, I'm the real G.I. Joe. I'm not a action figure. I'm not a animated person. I'm the real deal. I'm Sergeant Slaughter, G.I. Joe. So they all kind of looked at me, and we walked out. We got about halfway back, and my attorney and I decided to stop and have some dinner. So he calls his office, and his secretary said we didn't have cell phones. She said Hasbro's already called. They want to sign you up. I said, oh, really? So then I had to go to Vince. So I said, hey, Vince, guess what? I'm going to be G.I. Joe, the real American hero. He's all happy, and we're talking about it. And he said, well, that's great, Sarge, but I can't let you go to do it. And I said, why not? He said, because I got another toy company, and LJM, and we're going to be doing cartoons, and we're going to be doing this and doing that. And he said, but, if you want to go, you can go, but you can't be here with us. I can't. It'd be a conflict of interest. I said, oh, my God, it burst in my bubble, So I went home dejected, not to know what to do. And so that became a kind of a bad situation between Vince and I. And finally, I gave him my notice, and he said, you're not leaving. You're not leaving. You can't leave. I said, I got to leave. Got to go. And I said, I can always be a wrestler, Vince, but I can't always be a G.I. Joe. Yeah. And he said,
and I imagine the money was pretty good, too.
Yeah. And so I had to miss all that I had worked for, all that hard work and going through what I did to start WrestleMania 1. I had to miss it,
And prior to this,
I had to miss the first six WrestleManias. I had to miss. So that's when I got the call from Vince. I was watching a NASCAR race one Sunday afternoon, and phone rings. Hello, Sarge? Yes, Vince. Oh, hey, Vince. It's only one Sarge, one Vince, you know.
Yeah.
So he said, here, your contract's up with Hasbro. I said, well, funny, you should know that, you know. He goes, well, are you ready to go back to work? I said, yeah, I'm ready. He said, well, come to my house tomorrow, and we'll talk about it. I got an idea for you. I said, okay. So my wife and I and the girls, we have dinner that night, and I guess where I'm going tomorrow? Where? To Vince McMahon's house. Oh, what? What's going on? I said, well, I think Vince come to his senses, and he's going to take Sergeant Slaughter, the real American hero, G.I. Joe, and he's going to make Sergeant Slaughter the real American hero, G.I. Joe. And I kept thinking, now, how is he going to do this? You know, how's he going to do this? Because Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior were pretty well established, and so I go to his home, and we have this meeting, and he says, "Here's my plan. WrestleMania 6 had just ended like 2 weeks before that, and he said, I want to go to WrestleMania 7 with you and Hulk Hogan." And I said, "Really? You're going to make Hulk a heel?" And he goes, "No, I'll make you a heel." I said, "You're going to make Sergeant Slaughter, G.I. Joe a heel? Come on." And he goes, "No, here's my plan." So he shows me a drawing of the L.A. Coliseum, 104,000 seat capacity, screens everywhere, big screens on four sides of the Coliseum, and he shows me the diagram and all that. He said, "I want to put 104,000 people in here, and I know you and Hogan can do it." And I said, "Well, how are you going to do it?" He said, "Well, here's the situation. You know what's going on over in Kuwait?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, what I want to do is bring you back as a sympathizer for Saddam Hussein and Iraq. That you can't understand how the military of the United States of America could be so weak and allow Saddam Hussein to overtake Kuwait and not do anything about it, and that they're, you know," he goes through the whole thing. I don't want to go through it all. Yeah. So I'm just kind of like floored. I'm kind of like listening to him, and you know how Vince gets into the character. And I'm shaking my head, and he goes, "What do you think?" I said, "I love it." He said, "Well, I want you to go home and talk to your family, talk to your wife and your children, because it could be, you know, some ramifications, you know." And I said, "Well, okay." But as soon as I got in my car, I knew I was like screaming and hollering and singing, and I was so happy that not only was I back with the WWE, but I was going to be a heel again.
Yeah.
And so then we started doing the vignettes on different bases and things, and you were into that part of it where I you know, just I started out by myself, you know, and putting down America and how weak they are, and how they could let Saddam Hussein overtake Kuwait without any, you know, problem, and blah blah blah. Yeah. So then we got to where Vince thought that maybe we should have somebody else, you know, join me. So I said, "Well, how about a manager?" And he goes, "Well, who do you think?" And I said, "Well, there's a guy in Minnesota by the name of Adnan Al-Kaisi, but he goes as a sheik." And I said, "He's from Iraq." Yeah. And I said, "If I'm not mistaken, he went to college with Saddam Hussein. He speaks the language.
Wow.
What better guy? I'll bring him in as my general."
Yeah.
He says, "Okay." So he makes the calls, or whoever he has make the calls. We're in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and here comes Adnan Al-Kaisi, you know, not
General Adnan
at all. So it says, "Well, go put your outfit on and come back in my office and show Sarge and I." So here comes Adnan walks into Vince's room, and I thought Saddam Hussein had walked in the door. He looked exactly like Saddam Hussein, and he had a plastic gun and holster on his side. And I said, "That's unbelievable, but get rid of that damn gun. Don't give anybody any ideas." You know? And Vince says, "Oh, yeah, get rid of that." He said, he said, "Give me a promo like you would do with, you were Sarge's guy." So he started doing this Arabic promo, and I just like, I was grinning from ear to ear. And I said, this is it. So our first night in Hershey, Pennsylvania, we had a riot going. And it was just incredible how well we worked together. And he would just talk in Arabic, and then Gene or you or Brother Love would say, what did he just say? And I said, "This is what the general just said." And I would start my promo, whether what he said,
whatever it was.
So we got so much heat.
Yeah.
One night, I believe it was Philadelphia, Gene Okerlund refused to promo us. He said, I'm not going out there. Somebody's going to get shot. Somebody's going to get killed. And so Bruce Pritchard said, I'll do it. I'll do it as Brother Love. So he goes out there, and I think it was one of my first or second promos with Adnan. And, we just had him going crazy in Philadelphia. And from that point on, it was Katie bar the doors. So we started on our path, and just taking it nice and slow, nice and easy, getting win after win after win. And then Vince calls me up, "Sarge, we got a little change of plans." I said, not stop. And he goes, "No. Randy Savage broke his hand against the Warriors last night. And I've got to put you in with the Warrior and finish up all their matches that are already booked, And I said, "Oh, okay." He said, "I'm going to give you Sherry. I'm going to put Sherry with you for a while. And then we'll put Adnan back with you." So I think Adnan went with somebody else for a while. Or maybe he just stayed out of the picture. And so I had Sherry, and we did all kinds of matches with the Ultimate Warrior.
That must have been an experience.
Oh, man. The first time I wrestled the Ultimate Warrior, he was supposed to hit me with 3 clotheslines. The first one I could hardly get up from. And I made it up for the next 2. But I got back to the dressing room, and I kind of made it clear that he could hear it, that if anybody else, if anybody hits me with a clothesline like that again, they better be ready for a receipt.
Yeah.
And so he kind of gave me a nod, and he kind of whispered to himself, "I'm sorry." So then we got along just fine after that, because I would give him receipts back, and he knew if he hit me, way too hard. I could take a punch, but you want to get up and finish the match. You don't want to be knocked out.
And you got to keep working.
Yeah, keep working. So we went on this rampage, and we got to Royal Rumble in Miami, and it was time for us to set up WrestleMania 7. And so Randy was healed, and he was ready to go back to a Warrior. So we did the thing where Randy came out and hit him with a scepter, and I didn't really have to pin the Warrior. He hit him so hard, I think it was kind of a receipt for breaking his hand. And all I had to do was put a finger on him, and I could have pinned him. But, instead of, doing the quick 1, 2, 3, I got up and I threw an elbow on him, like I, was the one that caused him to lose. So I threw an elbow on him, covered him, referee 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So I didn't want everybody to say, "Well, Randy Savage is the one that,"
Right. Yeah.
So I put the elbow in there, so I could always say, "Well, I hit him with the elbow."
Right.
So just what I learned over those years with Harley Race and all those other great generals in the ring. But so off to the races, I go with Hogan, and
what a
my final
WrestleMania.
match before I go off with Hogan we have a cage match in Orlando, Florida, with Ultimate Warrior and I. The 2 nights before that, I have a match with him in New Haven, Connecticut. And some guy in the 3rd row decides he's going to go help the Warrior, and he jumps out of his seat, goes through the 3 rows, jumps up on the cage, climbs in the cage, match is over. And the next thing I know, here come the Nasty Boys. and they clean this guy's clock.
Yeah, you come in the ring.
Pulverized him. There was nowhere for the guy to go. He was in a cage.
Yeah.
So 2 days later, we find out the guy was a fugitive. He was on that show.
America's Most Wanted or something?
Most Wanted. He was on there. And so the Nasty Boys and I got kind of a pat on the back from the guy that ran that show. And in fact, he came and made an appearance, told everybody how that happened, you know. So anyway, the last match in Orlando with the Ultimate Warrior, Adnan and I are now together. And so I said, Adnan, stop over here at this vegetable store or whatever it is, kind of a place down in Orlando. So I go in and I get a vegetable and I got it in the bag and he's kind of looking at me and kind of smiling. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'll show you. So we get to the match and we get ready to have the match, and I take this potato out of my bag and I stick it in my trunks. And he said, what are you doing? You trying to advertise or something? And I said, no, you'll see. I don't want to tell you. I want you to have a big laugh as I'm going to have with it. So we start having the match, and I told the Warrior to give me a couple of clotheslines. So he gives me a clothesline, gives me another clothesline. That 3rd clothesline, I take the potato out of my pants, and I throw it up in the air after he hits me the 3rd clothesline. And it goes bouncing all around the mat. You know, it's got nowhere to go because there's a cage. Mm-hmm. And the Warrior just stops in his tracks. And he looks down at that potato, and he looks and he's wondering, how the hell did that potato get in here? And he's trying to figure, somebody threw the potato in there. And I roll over and I look at Adnan, and he has to hide his face with his shawl because he's laughing. And I have to put my hand over my face because I'm laughing. And I said, potato! Potato! You get it, kid? Potato! And that's the last one I'll take it from. and Jim started to laugh. And he never cracked in the ring, never laughed. Yeah. He grabbed that potato, and to keep people from seeing him laughing, he tried to put it down my throat, like he was trying to put it in my mouth, and was laughing and laughing and laughing. And so when we got back, we had a laugh about it. But on the WrestleMania, when he came for the induction for the Hall of Fame, the next night when we had the WrestleMania, I looked all day for him. I looked everywhere for him. And I had stopped and got a potato, and I had it in my bag. And so I kept looking for him. Well, finally, I walked by a room, and I see him. And I happen to have the potato with me. So he's doing a promo, and I just kind of inched my way in, and he sees me, and he's doing this promo with a bunch of guys. And I take the potato, and I show him the potato, and he started to laugh. And he started to laugh. And then he started doing the promo, and he grabs me and brings me into the camera. And he says, this guy, went through the whole thing, how I had this potato in the ring, and it was the funniest thing that ever happened to him. But then all hell broke loose. I was in Miami with him. This is before the last match when I won the title. Yeah. That night, I had my legitimate agent with me. His name is Rory Rosegarden, who produced all the Everybody Loves Raymond shows. Oh, wow. And he's with me, and we had to do promos all night in the Miami arena there. And so it got pretty late. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning, And finally we got out of there, and I'm hungry and he's hungry. And so we stopped at a place, and it wasn't like a regular restaurant. It was just kind of a hole in the wall. So we go in there. And there's only like 3 or 4 of us in there. Mm-hmm. And we're waiting. Finally, I said to the lady, I said, "Can we get some service? We've been waiting for a while." And so this guy comes out of the kitchen, and he's all in white, got a white hat on. He's a chef, cook. And he walks out, and he rolls up his sleeve of his T-shirt. He's got a United States Marine Corps, tattoo on his arm. Yeah. And he says to the lady, he's standing right there for a second. He walks over to me and he says, "Your friend there, is he your friend?" I said, "Yes." He said, "He can eat." He points at me and goes, "You're not."
Oh, man.
Because he watched the show that night before he watched the paper for you before he went to work.
Wow.
So I said to my friend, "I think we should probably get out of here." So
it's a Marine, yeah.
Off we went, and next day he goes back to New York, and I go to Philadelphia. And I get to Philadelphia arena, and I notice that people are like, when I'm going through the airports, they're, eyeballing me and
glaring.
And I get to the car. Now, by this time, because I'm the champion, I get a car, and I make my way to the arena, and I get in a little early. I said, instead of checking in at the hotel, I'm going to go right to the arena. So I go in, I see Jay Strongbow. He was the road agent. He said, "Sarge, how you doing?" I said, "Yeah, good. Made it through last night okay?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's the hottest thing I've seen, in this business. And you're on your way, kid." And I said, "Well, good." He said, "Have you talked to Vince today?" And I said, "No, I haven't." He said, "Have you talked to your wife?" I said, "No, I haven't talked to my wife." I said, "Is there a problem?" He goes, "Well, I don't know, but you might want to call one of them or call them both." So I find a payphone, and I call my wife first. There's no answer. I leave a message. So I call Vince, and of course he's at the office. He said, "Hey, Sarge, everything good?" I said, Yeah. He said, "You're all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." He said, "Well, have you talked to your wife?" I said, "No. Is there a problem?" And he said, "Well, I hope not." But he said, somebody called the office this morning, and they threatened to kill you, and they threatened to kill your family, threatened to kill me and kill my family, threatened to blow up your house, blow up my house, blow up the office and the studio." So he said, "I took a precaution to call your wife, and I asked her if she could spend the night at a friend's house or in a hotel till I can get some security at your house."
Wow.
I said, oh, thank you very much." So I finally get a hold of my wife, and she's kind of like laughing. She said, because when I came home from Vince's house that night when he told me he wanted to be the Iraqi sympathizer, she said, you can't do that. You're G.I. Joe. You cannot be an Iraqi sympathizer. You're going to get killed. And I said, "Well, let's see how it goes." So first thing, she's laughing, and she said, "Pop?" I said, "Yeah." She says, "I told you so." I said, "Yeah, I heard that things aren't going so well at the house." She said, "Well, things are fine." She said, it'll be fine." So I get home like 2 days later, and where I lived in Connecticut, in Western Connecticut, I lived on a plateau. And the reason I picked this house is because this is even before I was a villain or whatever. The driveway was called Walnut Lane, and it was a dirt road, and it went back about a quarter of a mile. And then you take a sharp left and go up this hill, swerved up, and finally got to the top of this plateau, and there the house was. And the minute I saw it, I fell in love with it. And I hadn't even seen the house. I said, "This is it. This is the one I want." So I figured this is going to be hard for anybody to ever find. So my family would be pretty well protected when I'm gone. So I get home, and I go up the driveway, and there's this Winnebago at the top of my driveway. How it got up there, I have no idea. But they got it up there. And I get out of my car, and 4 gentlemen walked over to me. They got coats on, and they all come over, introduce themselves, and they open up their jackets and they're packing weapons.
Mm-hmm.
They said, "We are security. We've been hired by the WWE to walk the perimeter of your property 24/7. Take your children to school, stay with them all day, bring them home, go to the grocery store with your wife, go to restaurants with your wife and children, with you." And I said, "Well, I don't know about all that. But thank you for being here." So they said, "Well, we're here till we're told not to be here." So I go in the house, and my wife's, got her arms folded and tapping her foot, as she should be. And she said, what is all of this?"
Wow.
She said, "I'm not having armed guards at my children's school. I'm not having an armed guard, behind me pushing a
shopping cart. Yeah.
And going to the hairdresser with me and this and that." I said, no, we'll take care of all that.
Yeah.
They're just here when I'm gone. That's all, So she was fine with that. So I was happy because I had a piece of property that was pretty tough to not only find but to walk around. I had 4 acres.
Yeah, but that's what you call major heat when you've got people doing that. And when you look back, Sarge, at WrestleMania 7, that has to be you had so many great moments, but the peak, I think, of when you look back at that character, that Sergeant Slaughter in that ring with Hulk Hogan in Los Angeles. They wanted to do it at the Coliseum, but they couldn't because of security reasons, and ended up doing it at the Memorial Sports Arena there. But still, I think they set records with the pay-per-view. It was just the people that saw it. Does that stand out? I mean, among all of them?
Oh yeah. With everything that went on, and as we started to go with Hogan, aiming for WrestleMania 7 and having a record, one thing is, in our business, and for those who don't understand in our business, when you have SO next to your name, that means sell out.
Yeah.
That you sold out the arena.
Yeah.
If you have something like 93,000 plus in an arena, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Detroit, whoever the main event is, I know it was Hogan and Andre, but there was a lot on that card. But that was a major, step in the direction where we're at today. And to have that, as a Medal of Honor on your chest, Andre and Hogan were credited with that. So for me to have with Hogan to do 104,000 and only 4 years later, that was what we were shooting for. So Vince told me, "Sarge, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you what to say. You do whatever you want to do because I trust you and you know your character. And if you get too far over the line, I'll pull you back. I'll pull you back, pull the reins back." So, of course, he gave me, carte blanche. So there were times, Sean, when I'm sure you witnessed it, Saddam Hussein's birthday. I go out and I buy a birthday cake.
Oh, man.
I take and have it taken out to the ring before my match.
Yeah.
And get the candles all lit, and here's my music, and here comes General Adnan and I, and we get in the ring. And of course, we found out after a while we couldn't talk on the microphone because people would drown us out. So I would have the announcer do it, and I would order him to say this and say that.
Yeah.
So I said, "You tell him, So, ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Slaughter and General Adnan would like you all to know that today is Saddam Hussein's birthday, and they'd like you all to stand up and sing happy birthday. It's Saddam Hussein, So, those people wanted to kill me. So we would time it to where we start singing happy birthday, and before the people were jumping in the ring, we'd have, Rick Rude's music or whoever I was wrestling that night, their music would play, and they would take over, and the people would be satisfied. They'd be happy.
Yeah.
So then there would be one time, several times, I'd have this piece of paper, and I'd say to the announcer, "You read this," and he'd look at it and go, "I'm not reading that." I said, "You read it, and I'll put you in the covert clutch." And he said, "Okay." So, ladies and gentlemen, I have been ordered by Sergeant Slaughter, General Adnan, to read this. Now, I am not. This is not my words. This is Sergeant Slaughter, General. So it's for those of you who may or may not know it, today is Veterans Day in Iraq.
Oh,
and Sergeant Slaughter and General Adnan would like you all to stand up and give 10 seconds of silence to all the brave Iraqi soldiers who died in the overtake of Kuwait.
Oh.
Well, I don't have to tell you, those people, before the seat was over, they were coming in the ring.
Yeah.
So we'd have whoever I was wrestling, their music would play, and they'd be happy. But then I got the bright idea. Let's do a silhouette. Let's go into the studio with a green wall, green screen, and we'll get a picture of Saddam Hussein, and General Adnan and I will stand on each side of him and look like we're standing there with him. So we do it, and God, it came out perfect.
Jeez.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So they put it on television, and before the night was over, Vince came to me and he said, "We can't put that on the air again." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I got sponsors calling me. I got TV stations calling me. They're all going to cancel. We don't ever want to go that far again." So I don't know whatever happened to the picture, but somebody in the studio had it, probably still has it. I'd love to get a hold of it, but those are the kind of things that we did, and it was just tongue in cheek, and we did different types of matches and different types of things, and then it was time for Hogan and I to get serious. So we started doing these promos, and someone got in Vince's ear and said, "Yeah, I don't know if it was Bruce Pritchard or who it was," said, "You got to have the Sarge burn the flag. That'll really put him in the seats."
Yeah.
The word came over to me, "They want you to burn the American flag." I said, "No,
not going to do that.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I will not burn the American flag." So I said, "But I tell you," I sat and thought about it for a while, and I sent back word, "Why don't we take?" First, it was Hogan's poster. Then I said, "Well, maybe we could take a flag stick and we'll put Hogan's T-shirt on it that says, Hulkamania."
Yeah.
And I'll say that represents Americana, and I'll start that on fire. And boy, when we did that,
God,
was,
it was over.
I think that was the best heat that ever was in this world of sports entertainment or professional wrestling or whatever you want to call it. The hottest that I ever saw a crowd, because I took their hero, his shirt, and said it was Americana, and I lit that thing on fire.
Yeah.
If I'd have lit the American flag on fire, those people would have walked out and never come back.
Yeah.
I mean, when they saw that Hulk Hogan shirt go on fire, they wanted to come back and see him kick my butt.
Yeah. And what a WrestleMania! That remains my favorite, just because everything that went into it and where it was, and it was just tremendous. Right. Sarge, you and I could talk to you for 5 hours, but I want to do some real quick things here as we wrap up here, because
I just wanted, just before you cut me off there,
sorry,
I just wanted to say how disappointed it was to do all that hard work. The reason I was getting to this point was that I worked so hard with the Warrior, I worked so hard with Hogan, and went through all the I had 3 rental cars destroyed. I had to have limos take me here and there. I never walked down a terminal of an airport. I was always I would go off the airplane, down the steps of an airplane. I'd get into a car with 2 police car escorts. They'd either take me to the arena or take me to my hotel, and I would stay in my hotel, get dressed there. They would call me up and say, "Okay, you're on next." I would go on right before intermission. I'd wrestle my match. I'd go back while they're introducing the intermission and what was coming up, rematches for the next time they were in that city. I'd be back at my hotel or on my way to the airport, so nobody ever saw me coming or going.
Yeah.
And to go through all that and what my poor family went through, my daughters in school and my wife and her friends, and you know, we were friends with Paul Newman, and he snubbed her one night and said, "Your husband is anti-American. I don't know if I can be with you." And it broke her heart, and what they all went through. And then we get to WrestleMania 7 and expected to have this 104,000 seat Coliseum filled to the rafters, and then be told, you know, 2 weeks before, Vince said, he called me and said it's going to cost $3 to $4 million to secure the Coliseum. He said, I told him no. He said, we're going indoors. We're going to go into the LA, you know, arena. And he said, pay-per-view will be tremendous. And of course, as you said, we had the biggest pay-per-view of all time for many years. And it wasn't, I've heard stories, it wasn't over, the angle wasn't over, Slaughter didn't have enough heat on him, and Hogan wasn't hot enough, and that's all BS. The whole reason we didn't go in the Coliseum is because it was going to cost $3 to $4 million to go in there.
Yeah. And
Vince didn't want to start out $3 or $4 million in the hole. So, you know, that's the reason we, you know, did go in there, and it was just a very real disappointment to both Hogan and I to work that hard, especially me, you know, for what I went through before I got to him, and not to be able to put that SO sold out next to my name and his for 104,000, which would have been the, you know, all-time record. And that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about, you know, we just we saw each other at the All In and the StarCast event that took place, you know, just outside of Chicago, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on these young people that you saw there, these the young Bucks and Cody Rhodes and Marty Scurll, who you know, have half their income is like merchandise. These guys are small businesses, kind of on their own. Do you like what you're seeing with these these independents and who are changing the world of professional wrestling in a way? What's your view of it all?
Well, I was kind of the, I guess, the pioneer in that also.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Not only did I cause Vince, you know, as my attorney says, Vince ought to thank us, and I'm sure he does every day, that we brought this to his attention, that he trademarks everything that he does now. Yeah. If unless it's their own name, he can't do that. But he makes a deal with them, and he owns, you know, 100% of all the characters and the trademarks, and we all taught each other a lesson. And I was the first one when I left the WWE or WWF. I was out there all by myself. I had nowhere to go. I didn't have any wrestling places I wanted to go, but my character was red hot. So I started booking myself in the independent circuit, and I was making, you know, almost more money with them and having days off and
total freedom
and the freedom, and not just it started everybody looking at it differently. Like, can we survive without, you know, a major league as the WWE is, or, you know, what do we do in between? You know, now that it's pretty much one basket. But I went to the StarCast not knowing. Well, I should say I signed up to be at the StarCast not knowing that there was a wrestling match involved. And I'm not sure if I would have did it if I had known that the wrestling match was involved. I was just called by a independent person that they'd like to hire me to sign autographs for 2 or 3 days at the StarCast wrestling convention. I said, well, I'll tell you one thing. I can't go into any arenas, or I can't, you know, have any logos. I still work for the WWE. I'm their ambassador. I work hard doing their charities. I work hard promoting their product. I do TVs, radios, newspapers, promoting their product, the pay-per-views, the televisions. They're superstars, and I don't want any problem with somebody running a camera with a logo behind me that's not WWE.
Right.
Oh, that's good. That's no problem. So I didn't know until I got about 2 weeks. I looked it up on the social media, and I saw this big match was being talked about with Cody Rhodes and all that, and I thought, well, boy, they got a pretty good crowd coming. They said something like 10,000 people.
Yeah.
And when I saw that they were doing that, I said, well, thank God I didn't agree to go to the matches.
Yeah. Well, they were two separate. They were two separate events. One was at a hotel, and the other was at the arena, the Sears Center. Right. So, and they were two separate venues. But what do you think of these young kids that are kind of taking their destiny in their hands?
I'm happy for them.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they're doing well. It might be might only happen a few times. I hope it does well for them all the time, but they got to remember that the only reason that they're there and that I was at the StarCast to sign autographs, and all those guys that were at the StarCast from the top of the heap to the bottom, making money selling our autographs and our pictures and everything like that. There's one person to thank for all that, and that's Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon is the reason that we were all there, because he started all that. He took it. He took a chance. We as I said, we were friends. We used to travel together, and he would talk to me about the future cable television. I said, "What's cable television?"
Yeah.
And pay-per-view. What's a pay-per-view? He said, "That's the future, Sarge. That's the future.
Yeah.
We're going that way. That's the way I'm going." And I got told a couple of times, I'm not sure if you're going to get a check this week or next week, but you're going to get paid. But right now it's a little tight. So I stuck with him. I dug the foxhole with Vince, and I wasn't going anywhere. Went through the war with him with WCW. I dug the foxhole deeper. All those guys got contracts, left him. That he made millions of dollars, and they just got given this contracts of all this money, and loyalty meant nothing. They all left him. I stayed. A few of us stayed.
Yeah.
And whether that's remembered why I'm still working for him or not, but I was in the trenches, and using my knowledge as best I could to help us win that war. And until Vince decided to go Attitude Era, we were fighting.
Yeah.
We were fighting for our lives to keep one foot in the foxhole, one out. But I wasn't going anywhere. I was going down with the ship, and the worst thing that the WCW did was to, they were live and we were being taped, and they were telling everybody what was going on in our shows, and people started turning channels to see what was going on in our shows.
Yeah.
So it just it was a strike against them and a strike for us, and I'm just proud to know that I was there and I helped, and I brought in a lot of characters that are still with us today, that were in a box of tapes, letters, wannabes that I went through in the office. J.J. Dillon, I went into the office, I said, what can I do? He took me into an office, there was like 5 or 6 boxes of these wannabe things, and he said, why don't you go through those and see what you find? Well, I found quite a few.
Yeah.
Undertaker being one. He was Mark Kellos down in WCW. They weren't using him much, and he wrote a letter and sent a tape that he'd like to join the WWF. And I took it to Vince. I said, I got, of all many that I found, I had Sean Waltman.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3 kid.
Yeah, he was down in Texas somewhere, and I took it to Vince, and Vince looked at it, and he said, "Well, he's a little small, Sarge." I said, "Yeah, but the kid's at work. Look at him, watch." And so Vince got tired of seeing Billy and Bart Gunn and Adam Baum and Taz and all these tapes I was bringing to him. He finally said, "Sarge, if you think they're worth a tryout, bring him in." Bring him in. So I took Mark Calloway to him, and he said, "Sarge, I told you, if you think he's good, bring him in." So I brought Mark in to Rochester, New York. He came in. I said, "Just get a place to sit, and we're going to use you like the first or second match, and we'll tape it. We won't air it, and we'll take a look at it. And appreciate you being here." So got time. I said, "If you know anybody here that you'd want to work with, you go grab them and see if you can work out a real good match." So second match of the night, he's out there, and I'm on the headset up in the gorilla position, talking to the referees and kind of giving the guys some pointers in the ring. I'm giving Mark Calloway a pointer. And so all of a sudden, one of my earpieces goes up on my headset, and I hear this voice, "Sarge, where'd you find this guy?" And I turned, of course, it's Vince McMahon's voice. Yeah. I turned him, I said, "In a box of tapes." And he goes, He said, "Send it to my office when you get done." I said, "Okay." So Mark comes back, and he said, "How did I do?" I said, "Vince McMahon wants to talk to you." He goes, "Did I do something wrong?" And I said, "No, I think you did something right, kid." So I took him down, introduced him to Vince, and he's been there ever since.
The rest is history.
Just one small story, and every time I see Mark, I said, "I haven't seen my 10% check in the mail." Yeah. And of course, I never will. But
yeah.
But it's fun seeing somebody that you saw in a box.
Yeah.
Or a letter, or and brought them in to be what they are today. I mean, it's gratifying.
Yeah. Well, and
one of Big Show's first matches, I was his tag team partner.
Oh, wow.
In a little place in New Jersey. He got trained by Larry Sharp, and Larry said, "I want to put you in a tag match with this kid, see what you think of him." I said, "Larry, you got something here. Better hang on to him. You better sign him up. Don't let him go."
Yeah. Incredible.
Joe already told me it. Yeah. I said, "You gonna want to stay in this business?" He says, "Yeah, I'm going down to WCW next week." I said, "Oh, good luck to you."
Yeah. See you again.
Yeah.
You did. And of course, the ultimate reward for all that you have done in loyalty and what you accomplished in the ring, in and out, your induction into the WWE Hall of Fame. And it's just an amazing career, Sarge. And I tell you, it has to be.
It's been a good run so far.
So far.
Really good. There's a few that I like to see get in yet that haven't gotten in, and I was lucky. I was put into the Hall of Fame when I was still working. I mean, I was at I think we were in where were we? State College. We were doing a TV taping there, and after we had our production meeting, I went to do something. I left the room, and as I was making my way back, they were emptying out, and everybody kept coming up to me and going, "Congratulations, congratulations, congratulations." I said, "What happened?" They said, "Well, they're going to do a Hall of Fame at the next Madison Square Garden pay-per-view, and you've been inducted. You're going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame." I said, "Really?" I said, "How did that happen?" They said, "Well, they went around the room and they said, 'Is there anybody here that you think is deserving of being in the Hall of Fame?' And Triple H raised his hand and said, 'I think Sergeant Slaughter should be in the Hall of Fame.'" Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when I was told that Hunter had nominated me and it was unanimous, I was more than like a baby when I saw him. Couldn't thank him enough, and that was before he was really involved in much of it.
Yeah,
and he knew that, or thought that much of me to think that I should be in the Hall of Fame when I wasn't even through working yet. So and so it was great. It was fun. They say it was probably the best class that they ever had. Unfortunately, there were so many of us that it kept going on and on and on, and we had a lot of things you wanted to say had to be wrapped up, but I said pretty much what I wanted to say, and just am very honored every day that I have my ring on, and I wear my ring pretty much every day, and know that I'm a part of something pretty tremendous in the world of sports entertainment. As all the independents out there before us, now and in the future, thank you, Vince McMahon, and your family, and all that you've done for all of us to be where we are today. And I just hope that there's something I can do beyond what I'm doing today to say thank you. I mean, we've mended our fences, and we're fine, and we just learn from each other, and that's all you can do. And that's one thing Vince McMahon does, is he learns each and every day, and he doesn't think about yesterday. He's always thinking about tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I said it humorously a couple of times at some Hall of Fame inductions where I was interviewed, and they asked me about the future, and I said, well, with Vince McMahon behind the helm, I won't be surprised if we have a WrestleMania on Mars someday.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's probably going to happen. It's just going so huge, and I'm just happy for everybody that's involved in it now and has been involved in it, and that I've learned from, and that learned from me, and that I can teach down the road. It's just gratifying that all this that I did was for something.
Yeah, not bad for a Marine.
Yeah.
You did okay.
Hoorah.
Hoorah. And Sarge, really, it's been an honor to talk with you. I'm glad I really appreciate you giving me so much time, and I would be honored if you cut a promo on me as we cut out of this.
Okay. All right. Let me see what I can do. I met 8 presidents, so this should be pretty easy. When you get asked to the White House and things like that, you start thinking that you're somebody. But I met Carter, Nixon, Ford, Reagan.
Oh, Reagan loved you.
Bush Senior, Clinton.
Yeah.
Obama, and of course we all met Trump at WrestleManias, but to know that you met 8 presidents and who your audience is out there, when a president of the United States invites you to the White House and knows who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to this thing for Ronald Reagan that I was invited to, my wife and I, and there was 200 celebrities that were invited with their spouses, and we spent the whole weekend there, and we go into this room right before the big dinner for him to have a re-election, and they said, okay, everybody in this room, and you go up on the podium there, and the president's going to come in and take pictures. So my wife and I, of course, we're in the back. John Studd's up there with us. We're the 2 biggest guys there, so we're way, way, way up on top. So I could barely see him, but I see what I think is President Reagan walking in. So here he comes. He walks in, says hello to Joan Rivers, who's down in front, a couple other celebrities, and he invited each one of these by himself. Not so much that he called them, but he had his people call them.
Yeah.
But we were all handpicked. So to be handpicked to be there was I know John Studd was there because he lived in Alexandria and had friends that were running the campaign. But so we took the picture, and he turned around and waved at us and left. And I said to my wife, geez, that wasn't really a great picture with the president, but oh well. So we get in line, get down off the podium, and they said, okay, everybody, spouses this line, celebrities this line. The celebrities go out there, you'll see your name on a table, and you sit there. And you'll be with, fundraisers and people that are, donating money to the re-election of President Reagan. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're the last ones in line. And so this guy comes over with a headset on. He says, Mr. Remus? I said, yes. Is this your wife? I said, yeah, this is Diane. This is my wife. He says, well, will you follow me? And I said, well, I can't. I got to go out here to the table. He goes, we'll get you out there, sir. Just you and your wife, will you follow me? I said, okay. So we go follow him for a while, and we go around this corner, and we go through this doorway, and there's President Reagan standing there. And my wife and I are like dumbfounded. We walk in, we almost fell over each other, and there's President Ronald Reagan standing from me to this phone, and he goes, Sergeant Slaughter. He said, I've wanted to meet you for a long time. I said, sir? He goes, Sergeant Slaughter, I've wanted to meet you for a long time. He said, in fact, I was wondering if you could put me in the Cobra Clutch. and I said, well, yeah. And as I made my way to him, and the Secret Service guys go, no, Mr. President.
No touching.
That's not a real good idea. Oh, okay. Well, how about if I drop down and give you some push-ups? So he goes down and do some push-ups, and of course the Secret Service, no, Mr. President, we don't think that's such a good idea, Why don't you just get a picture with him? And okay. So we talked, and he said, Sarge, I am going to fly the American flag over the Capitol in your honor tomorrow. Wow. And I said, oh, that's quite an honor. He said, for all the work that you do for patriotism and for the good old U.S. of A. And I'm honored that you could find time out of your schedule, you and your wife, to be here with me as I go for re-election. I said, sir, it's an honor to be here with you. So finally they said, President, we have to get going. And okay. He would have talked all day. But so anyway, we go back out there, and I'm making my way to where I'm supposed to go, and the Secret Service catches up to me, and he says, sir, your wife is going to go sit where you were going to sit. She'll be at your table. But the president has requested that you be on the podium with him. And I said, oh, really? Yeah, so you come with me. So I go out another door and go out there, and I get up on the podium, and my wife and I are the only ones that met the president that day that I know of. I mean, face-to-face like that. And so I finally sit down, and there's some other dignitaries up there. And I finally see my wife, and she's sitting down and shaking hands with all the people and explaining why she's there and I'm not. And so finally she sits down, and I get her eye, and I'm waving at her, hey, yay. Yeah, guess who we just met? None of you other people met him, And so we're kind of giggling with each other. And so here comes some people, and they do speeches, and they talk about the president and his re-election. And pretty soon here comes the music, and here comes the president. Comes up on the podium and walks by and shakes hands with everybody, and comes by me, gives me a salute, shakes my hand, thanks me again for being there. And so he starts doing his speech, and he gets about halfway through his speech, and he goes, and if they think that they're going to beat me for re-election for the president of the United States, that'd be like Beaver Cleaver beating my friend over here, Sergeant Slaughter, in a wrestling match. It ain't going to happen. And I said, did he just say my name? So he does the ends the speech, comes over again, thanks me, salutes me again, pretends he's going to go do a push-up, and he gets up and he laughs. He said, no, I just kidding. I'm just kidding. So off he walks. And so the the party's over. I go to get off the podium to meet my wife. And fellow comes up to me and goes, Sergeant Slaughter? I said, yep. He said, here's the speech that President Reagan just spoke. He wanted you to have it, and he autographed it for you. So I have that.
Wow, that is incredible.
I have that. I just saw it, in fact, the other day in one of my storage boxes. So of the 8 presidents that I met, that's one story I can tell you. The others would probably take a little longer.
Well,
Sarge,
Sarge,
that wasn't long enough. You was trying to get me to put you in your place for 7 hours so far.
Yeah. It's a 3-part series. No, but really, it's really been awesome. We have been trying to get together for a while, and we have a mutual friend that we share with in Lord Alfred Hayes, and it's just incredible to hear the stories that you have from your journey. It's just been amazing, and I really want to thank you.
Well, I tell you what, your brother Ian was a much better looking guy than you were. But
people liked him more. I don't know why.
I don't see him much anymore.
No. That bum, I don't talk to him anymore. It's been a long time.
You owe your money?
That was my one chance to be a heel, Sarge, and they didn't let me.
Yeah. That was fun.
That
was fun. You know, I actually thought you had a twin brother for a few weeks.
Wow.
I really did.
I must have been.
Because I wasn't privy to it. I wasn't in the studios, and until I got to the studio and realized that it's the same guy.
Yeah. No, I pitched to Bruce. I'm like, Bruce, let me we'll do like a split screen thing, and I'll come out and like I'll smash a chair over Sean's head, and then I'll take over the event center. How much fun can that be? And they just didn't buy it. Vince didn't go for it.
Yeah. Well, let me do a promo on you and see what we can do here. Attention, Sean Mooney, you scum, you slime, you maggot. Stand at attention when I'm speaking to you, boy. Thank you very much for having me on your show. And please call me again. Call me on the horn. Let's do this again. It's been fun. And until then, if there's no further questions, you're dismissed. Carry on, maggot.